Okay. I think everything is set. Oh my goodness. I thought I was all set up and ready to go. I had my coffee, I had everything. And then I'm looking at this because what I do during these streams is like inking. And I'm like, I have used this page to like block ink so much that you're just going to have all this like inky smudge stuff. So I have to go grab a sheet of paper super quick. So I know that doesn't make up for a very entertaining beginning to one of these things, but the only other one next to me is my test sheet. So yeah, and then my checklist of things to do. So it's like I don't think that's gonna work. So I am gonna grab. You know what? Never mind. I have a sheet of paper, a fresh sheet right here. Can recycle. I can do this, guys. I can do this. All right, so I brewed some coffee. Son's in bed, and so this is usually my work time. And if you're curious, let me have some of this coffee without spilling it on my page. I'm just going to build anticipation. So you guys can watch the stream and think, is he going to manage to drink coffee and not spill it on his page? But I have a trick with that, which is I keep my coffee over here, like by my desk. So it's far away because I have had enough moments in my life where I've accidentally spilled coffee on my page. All right. If anyone's still here. And then I noticed Chase is in the chats. So hi, Chase. How's it going? I think Chase might have gone to get some espresso. So we'll all be drinking coffee together, which is great for a long night of cartooning. I am going to just introduce myself for anybody who's new or just popped on the stream. So I'm Joshua Kemble. I'm a cartoonist and graphic designer, and I do these streams. So I've been doing that for like 15 years. I'm a full-time art director, and then when I'm not art directing, quite often at night, I'm working on graphic novels, such as this graphic novel, Jacob's Apartment, which is coming out from Graphic Mundi. And this graphic novel is about how some questions can shake even the strongest of faith. And I'm just going to kind of give a little bit of the snippet from the back of the book for you guys. But at first glance, college roommates Jacob and Sarah seem like polar opposites. Jacob is a Christian, Sarah is an atheist. Sarah is a drinker, and Jacob is a teetotaler. But they've been friends for years, finding commonality in their shared dream to create art. This is a coming-of-age graphic novel in the vein of Ghost World and Fun Home, and it weaves together threads of spiritual faith, identity, purpose, love, and loss to create an engrossing world in which sleeping and waking dreams collide. So this is available for pre-order. It's full color. It took me about 5 years to create because it was my first graphic novel. And that is coming out in May. So you should pre-order that from graphicmundi.org. You can pre-order it pretty much at any bookstore. I'd recommend maybe Barnes & Noble. That's a good start. Or your local indie shop. Ask them to order it. So this is a preview copy, but these will be available in actually June of 2022 this year. It was originally May, but there's a paper shortage to like push that. So that's one book. Sorry, we have one more plug to get to, and then I'm going to ink this panel and hang out with you guys. Okay, so this is Two Stories, which is a memoir about faith and mental illness. And this is about how I thought I was living the artist dream. I was a young, ambitious comic book creator, and I had a hip Portland apartment, an affectionate fiance, and my whole life ahead of me until the night I found myself on Burnside Bridge, willing myself to jump. And this comic is an autobiographical comic that's hand-lettered, hand-inked, and it explores how I got there, and it's a confessional graphic memoir that grapples with questions of faith, mental illness, depression, panic disorder, and ultimately redemption in a fallen world. So this is book 1, and this is available on Amazon right now for pre-order. So look at that. We got through plugs. I actually was smart and used some of the book copy because I'm terrible at pitching. And so we're done with all that. So now I'm going to work and just kind of shoot the breeze and talk about some stuff that I've been thinking about. I've been really enjoying these streams. They're really fun. It's like a art hangout late at night. I've also sent out the link to a few people, so we might have people joining us. And I think Chase said something like they're starting a live stream while they begin a fresh page of their graphic novel. So I'm kind of curious, Chase, do you have examples of your graphic novel pages? It'd be fun to see. Okay, so we're going to get going. So there's a couple things I need to do today. One is inking this page. So I'm going to start with that and just kind of tackle things one at a time in order of what I absolutely have to get out of the way. Frank's here. Frank, do you want to hop on? I don't want to pull you on stream so you're like up super late, because I know you've been like doing some pretty crazy long streams with Adam. So if you needed a break from streaming, I will not take it to heart. But if you want to come on and hop on and hang out, I'd love to talk to you, buddy. Let's see. Frank said, I'm printing out copies of my comic at the moment. That's Frank Salazar. He's our moderator in the chats, but I think you guys are pretty familiar with Frank. He's a guy who likes making mini comics and makes a ton of them and makes them pretty awesome. And he's also just a really good dude and comes on the streams quite a lot. So yeah, if you want to hop on, let me know. If you're busy printing stuff, that's fine too. So yeah, like I have a ton of stuff I have to kind of get done. But right now I have a window of time to kind of work on my comics. So I'm going to do that first. And that way I can kind of hang out with you guys when it's not like super late. Then I'm going to probably send out some press releases for Jacob's apartment. Oh, cool. Frank said he'll hop on probably in a little bit. Okay, let me send you the link, Frank, so when you are ready, you can hop on. Hang on. But no pressure to like hop on right now. Boom. All right, Frank. You have the link so you can hop on. And then Chase answered my question. They said, I've got 12 pages of art done, but they are chapter front piece illustrations because my book is going to be 200 plus pages. And the chapter breaks would be needed for my readers to endure the length. I like that. I'm a fan of chapter breaks. I will say Jacob's Apartment is a pretty tight story. It's told in like 136 pages. And there's not really a lot of chapter breaks because it's a pretty quick read. And it still deals with like some heavy subject matter, but I don't think it's quite as heavy as Two Stories. Which also there's like a podcast called Fanboy Planet that actually I think one of the guys who runs it is really good friends with Gaz Gretzky. But he stopped by my booth at LA Comic-Con and was kind of curious to check out Two Stories. And so he picked up a copy. And he just left a really awesome review of it. And he sort of described it as like a really good book, but his take was, and I actually am not surprised by this, that he had to read it in sections. So he'd read like a chapter, and then he'd kind of chill, and then another chapter, and maybe take a day or so. And I think like Two Stories is definitely one of those books where it's not a quick read. It's kind of heavy material, and it can get kind of heavy, especially if you're somebody who struggles with similar things to what I talk about in the book, which is like depression or panic and anxiety. Like, but I thought that was kind of cool as a description, because I was like, I was pre-thinking that when I designed the first book, like the idea of having the chapter breaks and also like alternating to some like alleviation during this story, because it's really heavy subject matter. So every other chapter kind of flashes back to these like fun, lighthearted childhood stories. And I'm just going to give you guys a little sneak preview of book 2, which is what I'm working on. So you're getting sneak previews anytime. But just as a kind of spoiler alert, like intentionally by design, the second book does not have as many pleasant breaks. So it is, it's going to be kind of brutal. Like there's going to be some chapters in here that I think are really hard to get through, and there's not going to be a lot of breaks until the end. But that's something I think about a lot when I write, at least when I was envisioning the book. That's like sort of trying to like control the tempo of it so that when people finally get to the climax, it really matters. And I got to disappear for a second to go check on my kid. I'll be right back. Yeah. What do you need, bud?
I was talking to my mom.
Hey, no attitude. What do you need?
Could you please come my mom over here?
What do you need mom for?
I need help me to get a lightsaber out here. I'm not talking about the noise. Guess what?
Which one? This one?
So I
The one other than those is the Jedi lightsaber. Why are you getting Jedi lightsabers?
those are not the lightsabers I was talking about. How those got there?
Go to bed. Good. Get into bed. Good. Lay down. Alright. Love you too. And I'm back. So my son needed help finding his Jedi lightsaber, and not the two that belong to his mom and dad, but his one. So he has a little training Jedi one. But that's where I was. I was being a dad and finding my son's lightsaber and then telling him he needs to go to bed. But hopefully he'll sleep well with a lightsaber by his side. All right, so we got Frank saying we had Jim Lujan on the Taraco Creative Cast. Oh, when was that? Was that tonight, dude? Because I might have missed that. But I was kind of eager to check it out, so I might have to like watch that and check it out tonight, maybe, like when I'm working on press releases or something. So yeah, so anyhow, like I think I was saying that like by design, when I'm like doing book 2, I'm gonna have it kind of build in cadence and tempo so that by the time you get to the climax of the story, like it's hopefully very impactful. And I think that's something that's like in our toolkit as creators that I think a lot of artists think about and cartoonists think about. But if you're out there and you're not thinking about that, I definitely would recommend it. Like, think about your pacing and your paneling and how you want people to feel as they're reading your book. And like, you want them to have moments of pause. Like Chase was talking about having like these chapter breaks to kind of alleviate the heaviness of the book. Maybe not even subject matter. Maybe it's just nice to have a chapter break. Anyhow, so that's stuff I like to consider. And then Frank said, yeah, it was a few hours ago, so it's fresh today. So if you guys are here in the chats, after the live stream, check out Frank's Tarako Creative Cast with Jim. I'm kind of excited. Did he talk at all about his new animation? I actually realized like last time that Gary was on, I think Gary sent us a sneak peek, and we were going to play it, and then we didn't end up playing it. And the downside is the sneak peek link was sent in the private chat of StreamYard, so I have no way of accessing it again. Let's see here. So that's been kind of crazy too. My son was sick. He had like a cold. We gave him a COVID test, like one of those ones just to make sure. And it seems like it's just a cold, like a sore throat, because he definitely tested negative. So we had him stay home from school, and he seems to be doing a lot better. So he might be back at school tomorrow. I don't know. But it was cute, like remembering what it's like at that age, being able to kind of have a day off of school where you're just playing video games, not feeling super great, but also not like sick to the level where it's like you can't kind of enjoy the day off of school. So it was kind of fun. And then Frank said he did mention his new animation, and they talked about Pleasure Beast as well, which I'm excited about. Chase said, I think 10 or 12 pages per chapter would be decent pace to maintain with an average of 20 chapters across the entire book. That's awesome, Chase. Will this be a first graphic novel or like one of many? Because that's pretty ambitious. Not that that's bad, like, I think before doing Jacob's, I had finished like a 24 pager. And then I did a bunch of anthologies, like tiny little anthologies, and t-shirt designs that were one-shot comics. So they kind of functioned as like a one-pager poster comic. Oh, cool. Frank's going to hop on too. He said he's getting his headphones. So that is awesome. So yeah, so I was probably a little ambitious too early on. I remember people saying I should just do short form stuff, but I feel like had I followed that advice, then I'd be at a position now where I have one graphic novel and then a bunch of floppies instead of two graphic novels and working on a third. And you do get faster at them as you go, like at least in my head you do. The problem is you also get kind of more ambitious with the approach. And so sometimes it can take an equal amount of time, but you're kind of leveling up your work, and that's why. I have a feeling for the third one that I have to work on, this book that my sister wrote that we got picked up by a publisher for West Margin, I believe is the publisher name. But yeah, like, so that book, Not Death But Love, which I'll be able to start once they've got approval once they have the final manuscript kind of edited. That I'm pretty positive will take even less time, and not because it's a pages that I'm going to spend any less care or like aesthetic care on, but just that like I picked a style that was a little quicker, which I think is kind of the only way to go about that kind of thing. But it actually worked out because when we were doing the pitch pages for it, I was really enjoying, like originally I was doing roughs with what looked like kind of like a almost like a black like colored pencil kind of vibe. So like, like a black Prismacolor kind of rendering look. And I used that for the roughs, and then I was like, it would be fun to like actually do a finished book that has like more of a rendered look, so you could do more atmospheric perspective and like moody lighting and stuff. Because with this book, because I do hatching on everything and I'm not using grayscale or anything, it really it makes the execution of it take a long time. So it's kind of a neat thing to have like something that's going to be a little different. And the neat thing is the publisher is pretty cool with me doing live streams as I'm working on that too. So that's pretty cool. That means I'll probably be doing a lot of these live streams and sharing the process as I go. But I'm also excited because I think I'll be able to get pages done quite a lot quicker using that technique. But you guys can hold me to that. So like, if you guys watch these streams and you notice that it's taking me like 10 years to do, I think Frank's here. So Frank's got the thumbs up. I love it. All right. So I'm going to throw Frank on in here.
Hey.
How you doing, man?
Doing good.
So how'd Morocco go?
It went good. We had fun. It was more of a, like, we did talk to Jim about some stuff, a little bit about animation, and then we just talked about random things. We did have a special drop-in guest, so I won't spoil the surprise, but you can go check it out.
There was a special drop-in guest.
Yeah, I pulled a Jerry Springer. I think it went better than a Jerry Springer episode.
Yeah. Was it a drop-in guest that had beef with Jim?
It was his ex-wife.
Oh my goodness.
No.
You're like, all right, so we have no
You haven't seen her in 20 years and you've been ducking the alimony payments, but here she is.
Which is so funny to think of with Jim, because I'm like, I think he's been with his wife for a really long time. So
I
that
think
must
so
mean,
too, yeah, and that's
yeah. So I'm like, that must mean Jim was like, well, Jim's gonna have to fill us in on it, but that must mean he must have been married at like 13 to his first wife. If that's the case. There was definitely something. They were definitely in some other state when that stuff occurred.
Cool.
That's cool though. I'm gonna have to check that out. And also I like the suspense of like not really knowing who the surprise guest is. So now I have to watch it to find out.
Yeah, it was a fun little thing, and it was a fun show. I enjoyed it. Jim made us wear baseball caps, and so he talked about why he did that, and so I just called the show like Baseball Cap Monday. So,
I like it. I'm curious about that too. I came really close to wearing a baseball cap today. I was like, my hair looks insane because I've been wearing a baseball cap all day. And then I was like realizing how uncomfortable that would be under headphones.
Yeah.
Because there's the headphone problem with baseball caps where it's like you put it over the cap and then
Yeah.
It's kind of pinching the baseball cap over it. So instead, I went with wild, crazy hair.
Yeah, the way I do it, because even though when I want to put my goggles on, I move the headphones just a little bit back, but this part of the mic is a little bit adjustable, so I can just position it. So I had the baseball cap, the goggles, plus the headphones. So
Wow, I like it. I like it. You commit, man. You commit to the bit. So, what are you printing out? Minis?
the 'cause if you remember, my ink was running low, so I had ordered a new cartridge, which I might have to order another one because it doesn't print that much. But I print out more copies of issue 3 bugging out, so it's these ash can sizes. So I got 2 more copies printed out, and I still have another copy here. So I had to take a break just to let the printer kind of cool down for a bit, and so I can gauge the ink, see if I need to print anything else besides these. So I can get some other stuff printed out also.
Nice.
Yeah, I got a copy ready that I'm gonna send to Anna because I want to send her a good copy. So the upside was like printing at home, and like I can catch flaws, and it's not like big gauging flaws. It's just little things that, but I can adjust them here at home quickly.
Got it. Like flaws in like the layout or flaws
Yeah,
in.
just in the layout, like
Yeah, it's good practice, man.
let's see if I have an
Because when I was
example.
in college, like we had a class called sequential imagery, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of notorious, at least in Cal State Long Beach. I'm sure it's maintained its reputation. It's like one of those classes you don't want to take till like probably your senior year, like your very last year of
Yeah.
college, because it's just very time consuming. And the thing is, they have you make a book. Like you actually make like a completed book. And so I actually made Numb like a good chunk of that, my 24 pager in that class.
Yeah.
The catch is you also have to do it hardbound, and you do your own saddle stitching and stuff. So you actually make like you custom make the whole book. But it's a really good thing for the reason you were mentioning. Like it was a really good lesson. We all hated it and didn't understand it, when we took it, like why we had to do that. But because we had done that, we learned about like pagination, like how to kind of like do a little mock-up so you know what like is on the right and on the left, and like why books have to be made in signatures of 4 or 8 if they're like saddle stitched.
Yeah.
So just like weird lessons that you like learn the hard way if you do them wrong, because then when you're binding the book, you're like, oh, this was like, yeah.
So I got here an example. So so you see here, I got a little bit of the tail cut off, so I was able to fix that panel and move it down. So it was just things like that where a piece of like the border was being cut off, and it didn't affect the story, but it bothered me.
Yeah.
So
no, that's good. How do you compensate for the double-sided thing?
what I mean, like for like on a double page, or
yeah, so like on an inkjet, like printers generally, like when it comes in, like my fingers here, it's like got a thing in the printer that like grabs it and pulls it in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And like, so it kind of clamps and pulls, but that section that it clamps and pulls on makes it a little bit higher up.
Oh, okay.
And so like if you're doing a double-sided page, it can kind of like make the registration and alignment of the other side, like, so like let's say I clamp, pull up, right? If I flip it, it's going to clamp here. So what ends up happening is like I have like a box that's got a little extra room here. On the other side, I have a box that's got extra room here. And so then it ends up with this, like, if I trim them, then like one side's like way lower than the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've had that with like mini comics sometimes. With this one, I think it might just be the printer that it doesn't clamp it as much,
Oh, okay.
so it's not that big of a difference. Um,
That's good because that can be really annoying, like the registration thing, to try to make that work on an inkjet.
yeah, and also like I have a the way I set it up, I use one of the Scott's templates, the double page template. First, each page I do individually, but when I want to print it a certain way, like this one, like this ash can size, I use Scott's double page template, so I have that as my guide, and it's not perfect, but I know that if it's even like in a certain sticking out too much in a certain area, like okay, that's gonna get cut off, so I can adjust it.
Yeah.
So
It's neat though because it's like DIY is like underrated sometimes, I think, for people as like a learning experience because
yeah, like I've
if I
learned a
hadn't,
lot from this.
yeah, like if I hadn't done DIY like books, when a printer would give me like, you know, a template to like set stuff up on so it would work with their printing, or like they'd talk about like, okay, your bleed area is this much or your safe area is this much. Like I wouldn't even know what they were talking about. But like because I'd done a bunch of my own printing and then also just like, you know, paid other people to like print stuff, but like as my own client, you know what I mean? It's like you really quickly learn like how to use templates, how to build templates, how to like compensate for printing and stuff like that. And so it's a good thing. And it all starts with like that, you know. Yeah, because like yeah, even building book dummies and stuff, like a lot of people don't think to do that. And then again, you know, like if you're laying out your spreads, it's like you can easily have them in the wrong sequence, you know, where it's like, you know, unless you just staple your own little book and then put like one, turn to page 2, 3.
Yeah, I do a lot of those dummies.
Yeah.
And I mark them so like okay, and then I go back like okay, where's my cover and where's the last page and where's this, so like making sure it's all on the right facing the right direction, it's on the right page, it's not.
Yeah. So it's good to do, especially if you're gonna plan like a book with spreads and stuff like that, because otherwise you got a lot more to compensate for later on. You know.
Yeah, this one I don't think I have any double page spreads, but I do have like one spread. Yeah.
You need to do a double page spread in the next Captain Goggles, Frank.
I have one in the second one. It's a little one. I was actually proud of that one because like it was my first time doing a double page spread and in a mini comic. So like, so I thought, oh, this looks cool. This is gonna look cool as a mini comic. So like, what I want to do eventually is just and I might even do that this year, but resize those pages, and if I need to go over the art, I'll do that. But like have all three of them in ashcan size, because I think that would look cool. As like
nice. So Chase said that because I asked them like whether this is like a first comic, because they're working on like a 200-page comic, and or if it was like, you know, they've done other comics, and they said it's literally their debut. I was kind of inspired by punk bands, that would make a double album like Husker Du's Zen Arcade or the Minutemen's Double Nickels on a Dime.
Okay.
And the Minutemen are awesome. And I was talking to somebody, I think it was Jake, was like kind of interested in bass, like getting a bass guitar.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but I was actually going to mention Mike Watt, who's like the bassist for the Minutemen. He's like, if you're taking up bass, the Minutemen are really great to listen to for like bass ideas. Of course, a lot of it's like kind of like listening to Mike Watt when you're beginning on bass is like listening to Jimi Hendrix when you're beginning on guitar. It might be a little advanced, you know.
Yeah.
But still, Minutemen are pretty great. The whole premise being they didn't make songs that were any longer than a minute.
Oh, okay.
So they're like really short punk rock songs. Usually have some kind of politics in it too.
Yeah. All right. I love politics.
Do you, Frank?
I don't.
I'm kind of weird about it because, like, I kind of feel like everything is political. So
yeah,
that's the hard
gonna
part.
say,
You know?
like, there's politics in almost everything, but it's when it's and there's a ways to like drop political messages without being antagonistic.
I think you should be antagonistic if you're doing art. Is that weird?
Well, I guess it depends on your art. But I mean, I don't know who I'm gonna antagonize with Captain Goggles and Masked Woman.
People who
monsters,
aren't
the
Christians. No, I'm serious. Like, don't you think? Like, people of different like religious beliefs, they'll be like, "What is this? This talks about the armor of God. This is offensive." You know
Well,
what I mean?
that's Captain Courage.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why am I getting that?
Yeah, that's why I'm finding a lot of people are mixing them up.
I
those
was
those
apparently
are
two
two different
different.
characters.
Got it.
But
my point.
But there is
My point
underlying.
still stands.
Yeah. Like with Captain Courage, yeah, it would be non-Christians would be the ones that would probably take offense.
So then,
But
like, are you
I
making
think,
political work?
well, if you put it like that, then like, okay.
I mean, it's kind of antagonistic, Frank.
But
just kidding.
but it's not. It's okay. What I'm not doing is, oh, Captain Courage says if you're not a Christian, then you're just a very bad person.
Yeah, you're not doing like the chick track route where you're just like,
yeah,
like this is the melting tumult of hell that these drug users are going to. Yeah. Which, by the way, I still kind of like chick tracks. Like,
yeah. So do I. They're not for those messages, but there are some that I guess like when I first and I think we've talked about this before. When I first found them,
yeah.
I didn't find those because I would just find them in the wild. So I found ones that were kind of like thought provoking and got me thinking.
Yeah, and then
and then later like
the crazier ones online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like the Dungeons and Dragons. I don't think I even heard of that until like YouTube. so
yeah, there's a bunch of cartoonists who actually like collect them, kind of like ironically collect them because like, and I don't even think, weirdly enough, like I don't think a lot of cartoonists like dislike the guy's art. It's just like so over the top, you know.
Yeah.
But I was just the only reason I was bringing that up is like I think inevitably having a point of view is gonna be aggressive to some people, you know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to say because like this is my feeling on it, and I might be wrong, but I feel like a lot of people who have problems with politics in comics or in art, they mean to say, and I don't think this is you, Frank, but I think a lot of them mean to say, I have a problem with your politics in my art.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Because I think that at the end of the day, at least a lot of people I see criticizing that stuff will literally buy something because it's opposed to a political point of view that they're opposed to. So I'm like, it's interesting. I don't know. It's an interesting thing where it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, and that I get. And I do agree that I even said this before, and it also caused like a little bit of tension because people thought I was kind of well, I said like everything has an agenda. It just depends on you and your point of view. Like my agenda, my basic agenda for these comics is I want to tell a story and I want you to buy it.
Yeah.
So that's an agenda.
Yeah.
Now if it's like, oh, in this comic I'm gonna, it's Captain Goggles and Masked Woman, and then out of nowhere I'm gonna have Masked Woman give a rant on the NRA or the I don't know what organizations, the border crisis issue. Well, I'm pro gun, so
that's okay. I mean, I grew up in the Antelope Valley.
Well, I'm saying
so
it wouldn't. Yeah,
I grew up and I learned
it wouldn't
how to
make
use
sense in this world because
I just don't.
Yeah.
But so here's the weird thing, though. Like, why not? Like meaning, I don't think. I think you should make stories that are good stories, and I think I've said that a bunch.
That's what I'm saying. The story comes first, and if it doesn't fit the story,
but let's say your story.
But if there's another story that I want to tell, it has nothing to do.
Yeah.
With Captain Goggles and Masked Woman.
Yeah, let's say like there is a story in Captain Goggles and Masked Woman where there's like a scenario in it that might maybe like say you're saying you're pro gun. I'm not. I'm not anti. And to clarify, I'm not anti-gun.
I'm not against your right to have a gun. I don't have guns, but I'm not opposed to owning one, but that's more of a legal issue.
Yeah, I mean, like
running with the law.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I'm not.
Has nothing to do with guns, but
I grew up like with a dad who like taught me how to use guns. I had like an uncle who went hunting and lived in like Boulder and like.
And I've done that. Yeah.
And I respect the hell out of it. However, I like the older I've gotten, like the more I've realized that like I don't think it makes a lot of sense to have a lot of guns. And I think there's definitely a big case for like regulating certain guns. And it's within the Constitution to do that, like it says well regulated. Anyhow, I'm not trying to argue about it because like I think we have differing views. Probably, I
only use that as an example, as something specific in our world, and in this world that might not even exist because it's a fantasy world.
And part of why I'm even like bringing that up is like, so we have differing views. So like, if you were to write a story, right? And I don't think, honestly, Frank, from like talking to you, I don't think our views would be actually as different as like people on the left and right would want it to be. Where it's like, I feel like we'd probably find a lot of commonality on a lot of things.
Yeah, I feel so too.
But my point is,
we're more centered on some things.
Yeah. But my point is, if we both wrote a story where there's a gun involved, that viewpoint that we both have might find its way into the way that the story is structured because that's who we are and we're writing the story. So it's like one of those things of, you might end up writing a story that really makes a case for why, you believe what you believe about guns. And I might make a story that makes a case about why I believe that. And it could be in the context of something like Captain Goggles,
Yeah.
So that's where it gets kind of hairy and weird to be like, well, people shouldn't push their agendas, because I'm like, I think the act of writing is pushing an agenda, so it's tough.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying, because I hated Captain Planet as a kid, as a cartoon.
Yeah.
And it's partially just because the whole plot would just like stop for a second while they're like, when you do this with the environment, like, and it's like, wait a minute, I'm just trying to watch this like thing, like,
Yeah, yeah.
so, and the weird thing is what they
It's
were
not like
teaching. Yeah, it
like
wasn't.
eh, like if I buy a drink that it's a styrofoam cup, like that doesn't automatically make me a bad person because styrofoam cups might not be biodegradable or good for the environment.
Or
So
maybe it does, but
it's not black and white
yeah, and I mean,
usually.
my point is it could or it could not, but either way, they can make that case in a story. I wouldn't say it makes you a bad person, and I've definitely bought styrofoam cups. However, I
Yeah,
think it's smart to like retain the environment, and I think a lot of the stuff they were trying to teach wasn't bad. It's just that like they could do it in ways that were more kind of like palatable with a plot rather
yeah,
than having like this guy just stop and be like, I'm Captain Planet and kids need to, and it's like, so
yeah.
there is a way to do it where you're teaching the same thing but you're just doing it in a
And
less ham-fisted way.
yeah, and it doesn't take you out of the story.
But I'll also say I've heard people say something's blatantly political, and I've seen the same thing and been like, oh, I think they're being blatantly political in their critique that it's blatantly
Yeah,
political. So it's kind of a tough one with that, I don't know. I struggle with that, like sort of navigating that conversation.
yeah, yeah.
But I definitely think if you write a good story, I think I brought up the difference between like Ayn Rand stories, and I want to think of something that's more like politically aligned with me. But Ayn Rand, well, Captain Planet might be closer to my politics, which is a really good example of like hackneyed writing where it's
Yeah,
like maybe the message was good, but like it's just really badly written and it's more a message with a story dressing it rather than a story with a message in it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I brought up Ayn Rand the last time I was talking about this too, as like somebody who just writes really bad stories. Like I'm 100% convinced that like they're just not a good story writer. um, because they're just really preachy. Like every single um it's like the guy on the street corner with a bullhorn going like you're going to hell and stuff like that. And it's like I maybe that saves some people, but I
Yeah,
really doubt it quite often because I'm like I think most of the time it's going to be relationships. And I know everybody's got different approaches, but I think it's
yeah.
going to be relationships that speak to people more.
That's
Um,
this.
there's
I do
comics
see.
there's comics and stories that are like that where it's like a guy on a pulpit with a bullhorn like yelling whatever they're yelling at like people passing by, whereas you can kind of do a better job at storytelling to get people engaged, interested, and then you
Yeah,
actually get more of an impact. And so that's to me what I'd like. So I brought up like 1984 is a good example of like a very
okay,
political message
okay.
written by a guy who had a very clear political agenda that he talked about all the time in interviews in his story, but he wrote a really compelling story, and it kind of makes the case for him rather than the story itself does. So I don't know.
Okay.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So that's kind of my stance on the whole
Yeah.
political thing. But I definitely don't have a problem with like, I mean, like, what do you do if you have a character who is political? Like, let's say in Captain Goggles, like one of your characters is like a hardcore anarchist or something.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
And
then
also
like,
we might have someone like that.
but I'm just saying if you had like an anarchist, and I also picked anarchists really carefully because it's like there's anarchists on all sides of the aisles.
Yeah.
Um, but let's say it's an anarchist, it's like, would it be overtly political to have them say their viewpoint?
No, because I think and I think also you would probably do this too. It would go with the story,
Yeah.
and there would be a counterbalance to it. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be Anarchist the comic. It would be a foe, and maybe later on he sees the error of his ways, or maybe he doesn't. But somewhere in there would be some
I have to
consequences to his
say,
action.
Captain Anarchist. I'm sorry, I would buy
I know.
that comic.
I throw out crazy names, and if you're like, that's not a bad. You should do that as a comic. I'm like, maybe I
Yeah,
should stop because I want to make those comics now, and like, I would get so sidetracked.
because now I feel like that could be like your
The well,
it could be like
we did talk about something like this on the show where someone threw out like, oh, what if Captain Goggles became uh, evil? So there'd be like a dark version of Captain Goggles, and
careful with that
and
because he might become more fun to write.
and we I don't remember we said it on the show or it was like behind the scenes that Dan and I were talking about like it would I think it was like behind the scenes because I was making the comparison to Reverse Flash, so it would be someone like that someone would use a similar theme
Yeah.
to put down uh, and ridicule Captain Goggles. So, but we have something like that in the works, so I don't want to say too much. But
Oh,
yeah,
Chase.
it's the,
So Chase in the chats was saying, I'm considering having 4 or 5 double page spreads during a massive samurai battle sequence, like Jeff Darrow's Shaolin Cowboy or Frank Miller's 300. Yeah, actually, on Artcasters too, we had a Dave Baker on who's done like a lot of comics that'll have like some of like one of them has like a 50 or 60 page sequence that's just action happening in like one double page spread for like 60 pages. It's really cool. That's totally doable, Chase.
yeah.
But that's a cool idea. Um, yeah, actually, Chase is really making a good point here too. Are there any punk bands you just can't stand because they come off as inauthentic and probably too clean? I'm thinking of the really generic big label pop like Green Day, which I absolutely can't stand. I used to hate Green Day, and as I've gotten older, and I actually have met some people who like knew the guys in Green Day, like when they were coming up.
Yeah.
Um, like actually one of my really good friends like used to hang out with like the guys from Green Day and play gigs with them. And like here's the thing, like I still don't listen to their music. I think their bassist is really good at coming up with catchy bass lines. I mean, for real, like I actually really like their bass lines. But I personally like can't stand listening to their music. However, I don't think they're like sellouts or they're being inauthentic because I think they've been kind of making the type of music they make since the beginning. And the people I know who've known them since the beginning, like, or knew them like at their roots, like, knew that they were never really trying to do like a punk thing. Like, they were actually
Yeah.
trying to kind of do this weird poppy punk thing. And so it was like they were always kind of unusual and different for what they were doing. So I kind of respect them a little more than if you talked to me when I was like 30, I'd be like mad just going on tangents against Green Day. But now I kind of don't really care. But yeah, it's definitely not my type of music. I would definitely put and I don't know if I mind if anybody's offended by this, like Blink 182 would be a band that I would put on that banner of like just nonsense, like boring, saying absolutely nothing with their music kind of music. And I mean, if somebody likes them, cool, you know, but like I feel like that's actually a really good case of where something is so watered down to be like mainstream, where it's like I'm gonna do a song and it's gonna be about running around with my pants off or something. You know, it's like like it's like faux rebellion, and like I don't particularly like that. So I I kind of get what Chase is bringing up, because there's some bands that are just so raw that when you hear them, it's like, it is the fact that they have like a really strong, aggressive point of view that makes them interesting. So I agree, Frank. I think you said this at the top too, where it depends on what you're trying to do,
Yeah.
But it's like, I would still hate to read like Harvey Pekar is a good example. Like, can you imagine reading American Splendor where Harvey Pekar isn't like ranting about how stupid Republicans are? And I'm not saying like, if you're a Republican, you should still enjoy Harvey Pekar comics. Like, they're still really well done. He's just being authentic about who he is, and like, that's kind of the appeal of a Harvey Pekar comic. Like, he's a really angry guy who just rants about stuff, and like, it would suck to me if like somebody told Harvey Pekar like, don't share your point of view, like you're making comics to make money. It's like, but Harvey Pekar, like, that's why his comics are good, so I don't know. Same with like Dave Sim, who's like just got horrendous points of view about women. He's like super misogynistic, but it does make for interesting work. Like, I don't know. But then again, to back you up, like, Dave Sim did lose a lot of readers, because of that. Like, he even lost an editor because of that. So, I think when you get into that, know what you're risking,
Yeah.
Frank, I think you were on like a show once where somebody in the chats or somebody in a comment section or something had like kind of been all shocked that I mentioned my viewpoint. I forget, but they were saying like, you've lost yourself a customer or something like that. And I was like, it was weird because I was like, oh, and they were trying to attack Scott, which is weird because Scott doesn't do that.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that now. It was in the comment section of what in Artcasters, and it was the one where Gene was on. I think it might have been not the last one, but like the one before his other.
Yeah, and it was just a weird one because it's like Scott doesn't tend to get. He actually kind of goes out of his way to be very apolitical with his work, and then like the guy was kind of telling me like that I shouldn't share like too much about who I am in my work because that could cost me customers. And I was like, dude, I do autobio comics.
Yours is autobio, so
yeah, I was like, so
I expect that from
like, there's definitely different rules for different things,
Yeah, like, and that's what I was saying. Like, it depends what you're doing and on the story. Like, I don't know if I might just stop giving examples because every time I give what like I think is off the wall, you're like, that's not a bad idea. You should do it. Like, oh, I don't know.
I kind of like your off the wall one. Like, I think Captain Anarchy sounds pretty awesome. I could see, like, to me, I think he should be like really metal, and you can write it to like appeal to like 7th graders.
I might remove the captain because I think that's what confuses people.
Yeah, well, that's true. I guess it would be kind of weird to be an anarchist and also a captain.
That's true.
Maybe that could be the thing. Maybe like Captain Goggles could just tease him and just be like, but how are you a captain if there's anarchy? And it's like, wait, what? Yeah, like, how are you a leader? I thought you guys were leaderless. Anyhow, but I mean, when you're at that age, like 7th grade, where like drawing an anarchy symbol is super cool. Like,
I remember that. And the anarchist cookbook, and people were like, oh yeah.
I didn't go that far, Frank.
I never got it or made it, but I knew about it, and people were like, oh, because we're looking that up. I don't know anyone if they actually.
I knew some people who were into the thing, but
yeah,
there's an age where like that stuff is like super dark and awesome and cool.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. It's a weird thing, man. But I would personally like not be telling people they can't be political in their work. Because I like too much stuff. Like, I love Bob Dylan, and I'm like, can you imagine somebody telling Bob Dylan he can't be political? Or like Woody Guthrie when he put like "This Machine Kills Fascists" on his guitar and wrote "This Land Is Your Land," and like it became an anthem of the U.S. And I mean that's a political as hell song. Like if you listen to the original "This Land Is Your Land," that song is like so critical of corporations and stuff. It's really weird.
It's like
you know,
Born in the USA. With,
that got like hijacked.
Yeah, like it became this anthem, and I still hear it, and I like it too. Like I'm guilty of playing this on the 4th of July, but it's like anti-government. It's like putting down politicians and just the way things are run, and
but like
Ronald Reagan's like that's the best patriotic song I've ever heard.
Oh yeah, and like the writer of it was not a fan of Reagan, but it's like it's weird because like I don't know, like I feel like it's too safe if it's like the other way. Like I feel like we can't bubble wrap the world, you know? Like
yes. And I'm not against any politics, and
I kind of get what you're saying, and it's also like each person's personal tastes and stuff.
Yeah, like also, Scott, that he goes out of his way to be apolitical. I try to do that with my comics, but if there is a story that needs to be told, and I mean it's heroes fighting bad guys, so it's not gonna be like, well, have you thought not robbing people? You're right, Captain Goggles. I'm not gonna do that. And like, no, I don't want to do that either. I don't want to sugarcoat my stories.
But imagine, like, so, like, and this is a weird little thought experiment. So, like, if you're coming up with a hero and a villain, whatever you make that hero or that villain becomes political.
Yes.
So, like, I instantly think of like Batman and Robin, and not Robin. I'm
Joker?
Robin's the bad guy. Batman and the Joker.
Yeah.
So like, there's sort of two different philosophies that are playing off of each other, and they sort of make like they sort of make him like this ideal villain for Batman because like he's sort of like the opposite, you know. But inherently, when that happens, like the stories are going to come across as a little political, you know.
Yes.
So the thing that bums me out when I hear people say people shouldn't be political, and this is my own take on it, is like I feel like it's very like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like being a snowflake.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's like, really? Like, you know, it's kind of like, I want everyone to have trophies. And I'm like, no, like, maybe everyone doesn't need trophies. Like, maybe people have viewpoints. And maybe stories do get political. But I also feel like it sucks because there's times, Gary was talking about this recently too, right? Where he has criticisms of some of the Star Wars movies.
Yes.
And he said it kind of sucks because he can't really talk about them without having these strange allies that don't like Star Wars, but it's like for totally weird, different reasons than just like story critique. You know?
That we talked about that on the Taraco, and that's like a perfect example because my regular audience, and it was my regular audience, like they're pretty good people, but like he mentioned Star Wars and he mentioned Eternals and Batman, and like there was like people going off in the chats like, what the heck's going on here? Like, what the heck happened to my show?
Yeah, it's a weird thing.
Even like a little someone Gary said like, oh, I haven't seen that movie, so I can't judge it. And someone going off on the movie like, okay, but we haven't seen it, like, and I hadn't seen it either, like, so I can't give you my opinion. I can't say it sucks, and I can't say it's great or say it's mediocre. I know nothing about it.
I saw Eternals, and I kind of didn't mind it. It's just the one thing I didn't like about it was I feel like
I think that was the
all
one mentioned.
superhero stories suffer from having too many characters quite often.
Yeah,
And I feel like the Marvel movies have in general somehow avoided those pitfalls for the most part. But
because I think they build up certain characters first and then
yeah, but I think
meld it
because this
in.
movie had so many characters and it was like they were trying to kind of give, and I kind of get it. It was like more like, to me it's an interesting premise and it definitely has a different flavor than other Marvel stuff, because it gets way
Yeah,
more like kind of mythological, but not in like the Norse way.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so it was
It,
interesting. It had some interesting ideas. I don't personally, I did like the twist because they had a character in it that was kind of your typecast of like who would usually be the guy who's like the bad guy at the end. And I
oh,
think
okay.
he's been cast in that role for like a bunch of stuff too, because he's not like the super fit perfect guy, so he's perfect to play like the nerd who like flips out and kills everybody at the end or whatever.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The guy you trust at the beginning and then they're just like secretly like a weird creepy incel or something. And
Yeah.
it's like they actually did a twist with that where that guy gets to retain his heroism, and I thought that was really
Oh, okay.
cool and kind of unexpected because they did a lot of like those little plot points where they kind of make you
Yeah.
suspect that they're going to go that route. And the fact that they didn't was really cool as a guy who's like a nerdy kid.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I like when the nerdy kids aren't
Okay.
always typecast as like the guy who ends up being the villain. But yeah, Eternals is something I'm still like, I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think it was
I
great.
haven't seen it. Like I
Yeah.
seen like reviews about them, and it just looks a little bland to me. But
Yeah, that's kind of,
I
yeah.
haven't seen it.
And it took me a while to get through it, to be honest. Like, it wasn't something
Yeah.
like when I watched like Doctor Strange, like I was like instantly sucked in and like it was
Yeah.
hard
Yeah.
to stop watching. So I ended up, and I'm a guy who like, we're both in similar positions where we're always working. And so it's like
Yeah.
if a story or a movie is going to hold my attention, like that says a lot, because it's like I have to draw stuff. So if I'm like actually not, I'm not just taking like 30-minute sections here or there.
Yeah.
Eternals was not one of those. Like it didn't pull
Yeah.
me in the whole time. But
Yeah.
again, like the weird thing is I definitely don't think it was like the strongest thing, and there were definitely some weak story points. But
I could see that.
the main criticism I see people making of it, I didn't really find to be the problem with the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people were just mad that there was a story that had diversity. They were like, why do there have to be characters that aren't all one race or something? Um, I've seen people get mad at that where they're like, it's forced diversity, and it's like, no, that's not the problem with the story. The problem with the story is actually they just didn't develop any of the characters. That's the
Yeah.
problem, you know.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, and I see that as being a big problem that characters aren't developed, and unfortunately, if they are not, like if it's a different race, not race, yeah, race or something, then it falls in that trap. Like, well, see, you put in this character that's like this, and it didn't work, so don't use that characters like that. But if you develop a character,
yeah,
uh, you get to know that character more, and you're like, oh, okay, these are their motives and
yeah, but like the weird
likes
thing
and
is,
dislikes.
even as a critique of that film, like I didn't really see that as any bit why it was a problematic film. Like
Yeah,
the film wasn't problematic because they tried for diversity. It was problematic because they had like a kind of mediocre script. And to be honest,
yeah,
from what I've heard about Eternals, the comics, like I don't think it's pulling from like the best material either, you know?
yeah. That's what I hear too. Like, um, it's Kirby, and his art is fantastic. But like, I've never read those books, but from what I hear, like they also weren't like the most action packed or like they weren't the cream of the crop.
Yeah, and there were things I really liked about it too. Like I said, there's some really neat things about the idea of the mythology behind it. And I really did like the way they kind of played with um, some of the characters like moral quandaries after having existed for a long time. I don't know. It's got some really cool things too. Like it actually
Okay.
gets into a little bit of like some cool concepts that I wish they had kind of pushed further. But yeah, I don't think it was a bad movie. I enjoyed it. I just didn't think it was. I think the
A
problem
strong
is
movie.
like, to be honest, and some people might hate me for saying this, but it's like a lot of the Marvel movies have been amazing. And
Yeah,
so I think it's just like when you have one that's like pretty good, it just feels terrible because they've done a really good job on a lot of them, you
yeah.
know?
And it's okay if they have like one or two conquerors, especially since it's phase four. Like they're
Yeah.
figuring out some things again because now they're using whole new characters.
Yeah. And I'm
So
always weirded.
it's fine if Eternals isn't that great, but maybe the next one will be. Maybe the next one they'll learn from their mistakes and not cram in a bunch of heroes or whatever it is that
I
they
wanted to
do.
highlight what Chase was saying when we were talking about, like being in junior high, drawing like an anarchy symbol. Chase
Mhm.
said the cool S is peak anarchy for kids. Totally. There's that weird S that like every kid draws.
Yeah,
Um, you know,
I
yeah.
remember seeing that in fifth grade actually.
Yeah. And it's just like nobody really knows the origin. It's just like a weird, funny, like crazy thing that kids are obsessed with. Um,
Yeah, which
the film
I thought it was like a local gang thing here. That they're like, oh no, like everyone does this.
I think it's just because it's an easy letter form to like simplify in this kind of like cool way. Um, but Chase was also saying the filmmaker Wim Wenders. I don't know who Wim Wenders is. Do you,
Is that the one
Frank?
that did Eternals? I think
Maybe.
it's the lady.
I don't
I
know.
heard a little bit about her. I what I did hear was that her original script she wanted to uh end the world, like the whole world just blows up, and they wouldn't
Oh
let her do
wow.
that because that would be like the end of the Marvel universe and no more movies.
Huh.
And so I heard she was like complaining like they wouldn't let me do that, and like, I
They
think they
wouldn't
should
let
have
me explode the whole. So this is one thing that also makes me
or
really
destroy the world. Oh, like yeah, she wanted like it was gonna be no more Earth, and there was like no way around it. So like oh no movies then. So like okay.
I could kind of understand that because there definitely was this whole plot that almost seemed like it would require the Earth to be destroyed for it to happen.
Oh,
And they
okay.
kind of explain it like that's kind of how it happens. And then there's a scene where it happens and it doesn't destroy the Earth, and it's a little strange because it feels a little odd for like the plot point.
Okay. So I think that's what she was talking about that it would have destroyed the Earth. But
So they made a quote. I don't know if that's the person though, because Wim Wenders, they said it's a he,
oh, then I
said
don't have no
political
idea.
dynamics can literally be extracted or found in any story, regardless
Oh
of the
yeah,
intentions of the storyteller or creator. Yeah, and I honestly,
yeah.
I get really suspicious. Like again, I know I've critiqued like two stories that I feel are like badly political. I don't think the politics are bad. I just think they're badly written. Um, but I tend to think when people highlight politics in their critique of something, it's not that they don't like politics, it's that they don't like those politics. And I think I wish, to be honest, I just wish people would be more honest about that and be like, yeah, I just don't
Mm,
like those politics. I don't mind my politics. I just don't like those politics.
yeah.
You know, that's all I wish, because I've also seen people who like, okay, Frank, what's your thoughts on this?
Okay.
Somebody who says, I didn't like this story because they were trying to shove politics down my throat, but they'll watch like a Kevin Sorbo film that's like a Christian movie. do you feel like Kevin Sorbo doesn't shove politics down people's throats in those movies?
Oh yeah, he does.
Because like I remember trying to watch. Oh my gosh, what's the one about the professor or whatever?
God's Not Dead.
Yeah, it was hard to get
Yeah,
through. Cause like
yeah, and Kevin
I'm a
Sorbo. I ended
Christian.
up hating Kevin Sorbo after that, but like, you know what, he did a good job. Like, he made me hate this character, and then
Oh,
I
see,
kind of appealed with it. Like towards the end, like, oh, now I understand why
that's
he
the
hates.
part. That's the part I didn't like about it though, because I realized like that movie, like, and I'm a believer, right? But
Yeah.
I'm also a believer who's like heavily been in the college system, like all the way up to like graduate programs and stuff.
Oh, okay,
And it
yeah.
was just such a weird straw man character, like the professor. It was a straw man, and so it was like, yeah, I mean, like Christians might like that because maybe that's what they think professors are. You know, like if they're unfamiliar with like that system,
Yeah.
but it's like that's not what it's like at all. Like you'd actually get fired if you were that guy. Like,
Yeah, and
and
I
like,
I I figured like that was an exaggeration because it was like
yeah.
it wouldn't happen. Like
So
you, so,
if I watch that movie and I see this like really bad cartoon of a professor and it's like this really clear, and I'm a Christian and I'm kind of trying to be on the side of like the people who made it,
yeah,
and I'm finding problems because I'm like, this is like really cartoonish and kind of offensive to like the people that are like, it's a very unconvincing villain basically,
yeah.
and a very unconvincing hero, because even like the main character who's the Christian is like this flawless human being who is like completely in the right. And what's weird too is like I think it would have been much more interesting if they had made it more nuanced, you know, like maybe the kid who's like thinks they're taking a stand is like the kid who took a stand in my friend Alan's class when he was teaching junior college and like was
Yeah.
trying to witness to him and didn't realize that Alan is like a theologian. You know,
Yeah.
like, and like the guy was like trying to rail at him for teaching like The Great Gatsby, and it's like, dude, The Great Gatsby is not a book that makes it look like decadence is this great thing. You know, it's not a book that's like preaching decadence. It's like a book
Yeah.
that shows total depravity. Anyhow, I think I told you that story about him. But anyhow, my point is like, I felt that was really political, but I see a lot of people who like hate politics in stories who will watch that movie and be like, yeah, see, politics shouldn't be in stories. And I'm like, you show that to anyone who doesn't believe what they believe and they'd think it was highly political, right? So
Yeah.
it's a hard thing because it's like it's all in the eye of the beholder. But like I don't know, I wouldn't feel right telling people to not have politics. I just say do it better. Same with that. Like part of why I'm doing a story about my testimony is I cockily think I can do a better job than that book, like than
Yeah.
that story. You know, I think I can do a better job.
Yeah. And
Maybe I
I'm
can't.
I'm I'm kind of doing that a bit with not so much Captain Goggles, but with Captain Courage,
Yeah, I can't
where
believe I had confused those, Frank. Why did I confuse them?
there are like similar elements, and there is like an underlying message in Captain Goggles and Mask Woman. There's like little parallels, but it's not like you're it might change because we're still like working on what this world is. So we've already decided that it is Earth. It's just like a more futuristic Earth. But originally, I had no plan on it being Earth, so I didn't want to like because there's gonna be aliens and monsters,
Are you
and
going to
then
explode the Earth in it? Like just
uh,
destroy it like Eternals?
it's gonna be in the middle of the graphic novel, and the other 50 pages is just gonna be darkness.
I
And I'm
love
gonna
that
charge
idea. It's
people
just darkness, and you
environmental.
see
Just black pages.
you just see Captain Goggles just floating.
Each page I have like the goggles, just like
Oh, that's good. That's good. Actually, it would be
a
Goggles is
flip
gone.
book.
Captain Goggles is gone, so it's just the goggles
Just
floating
the
in space.
goggles.
And then every once in a while they like, hit space debris or something.
Yeah. And it's no more
And
anything.
then it says Finn.
With Captain Courage, it is faith based.
Yeah.
So and right off, and I'm not against this, but like my audience isn't solely Christians, so I want anyone to be able to read it and relate to it.
Yeah.
And um,
well, and I think you should have the right to do it. And I would get on anyone's case who would tell you like, hey, you shouldn't put your stuff in like stories. You know what I mean? I'd just be like,
yeah,
wait a minute. Frank has just every right to like put his point of view in a story as you do, And
yeah.
like,
And then I've had
yeah.
some of like the opposite, where like some people from church are like, oh, so like you should have Captain Courage do this, and he goes to churches. Like, well, that's not what he does. Like he he's not a preacher, so it's like
So wouldn't
it's not. But
wouldn't it
and
bum you out if
and
like,
it was like no, I don't want to sugarcoat this. I don't want to just put this like, oh, people of faith never go through struggles. Like I want to have scenes where he's kind of questioning things, but he's working through them. And while he's working through them, there's a bad guy, wreaking havoc, and he has to not just battle his own demons, but like battle this guy too. So like I want like something that is relatable to people.
yeah, I feel like, I don't know. It's kind of like I was talking about this the other day with like kids books, where a lot of
Yeah.
people will write books for children and they kind of treat kids with so much kid gloves that it's like they almost forget what it's like to be a kid,
Like that's the thing. I don't want to sugarcoat it and water it down. Like
yeah, and I kind of feel like that happens a lot with some, at least for me, it's like as a Christian, one of the things that makes me avoid a lot of Christian art, like the plague, honestly. And by the way, there's a lot of great Christian art out there. I've even mentioned, really recently, like my friend Alan has a book called You Are Not Your Own. And I would 100% recommend that to anyone who's kind of curious about like faith or things like that. But it's definitely a book that I think is more for Christians. Like it's not really trying to teach people who don't believe or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's good stuff out there, I think, let's see, Blue Like Jazz is a great book. The movie, not so great, but the book's great. There's a lot of really good Christian literature and books out there.
Yeah.
There's people like C.S. Lewis, who's amazing. There's bands like Sunny Day Real Estate who are like amazing, and like, so it's like it's out there. There's some good stuff, but part of what makes me avoid it is like I almost think they forget what it's like to actually be a Christian when they're writing Christian books sometimes. Like, or, oh, wait a minute. That wasn't what I meant to say. Okay. I have a better way of phrasing it. I think they forget the Bible when they're writing those stories.
Okay.
Because can you imagine the story of David if you took out all violence and sin from like the main character who's a man after God's own heart?
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't have the story of David. All of the great figures in the Bible are like really flawed figures, except for Christ, and it's like that reflects Christ. And so like, I feel like that should be in Christian art. Obviously, like gauge to age ranges, right? Like I'd be furious if my son were reading a book and suddenly it has just people getting their heads ripped off or something. I'd be a little annoyed. Because I'd be like, I don't know if like that's right for like an 8-year-old, But Chase, by the way, clarified who Wim Wenders is, because I didn't know. They said a German
Yeah.
new wave director from the 1980s who made Wings of Desire in Paris, Texas, neither of which I've checked out, but I'm guessing Chase, since Chase mentioned Husker Du, which I always mispronounce because when I got into Husker Du, we just called him Husker Du. But yeah, good music. So you've mentioned a couple really cool things, so I'm imagining I might like it if you like it. Because it seems like we have similar taste. And then a cartoonist I follow on Instagram is remaking an anti-drug kids comic from the 80s panel for panel, except it's really crude, but there's sweating and substances everywhere with really dark humor. That's funny. And one of the characters is a giant bottle of glue because sniffing glue was a prevalent problem for kids. You know, it's also like, I think that was part of the panic of the 80s.
Yeah, I've always heard that, but I never saw that or experienced that.
Yeah.
The sniffing glue. And what we would do, we would put glue on our hands and it would
And
become a
pretend it
second
was
skin
skin.
and then rip
Yeah.
it off.
Yeah,
And
for
I think kids
sure.
ate glue because they're like little kids and they're just eating everything. But like I
But
don't think
I never met any, like, I knew a lot of guys who did pretty heavy drugs in high school, and none of them
yeah,
were like, dude, we got to huff glue. But I will
yeah,
say there's a great Ramones song that riffed on that. And like literally, I don't think anyone in the band actually sniffed glue, but they were just kind of riffing on that because it was shocking.
yeah.
So there's that. But yeah, it is funny that there was that like 80s phenomenon of fear about that, you know. It's weird.
Did
It's a
did you
weird
ever
thing to
have
think.
this? Yeah, like
Like I'm
I
trying to
love
think
the
like,
scares for back then, and
yeah, I'm trying to think of a story that's not political.
I don't think there is one. Like we are saying, everyone and everything has its agenda, whether it's good, bad, force, or whatever. It's still there. It's really just your motivation or the motivation of that artist or creator.
Yeah, and it's
But
weird because I've definitely seen stuff
but there's ways to
like I
do it
would
where
say the
it's
funny
not
thing is that God's Not
off-putting.
Dead story, right?
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
imagine the filmmakers probably come from a very similar mode of heart to where I would come from things at, because I'm a believer, you know?
yeah,
So I'd imagine we probably have very similar desires for people and stuff like that,
yeah.
but like I think we have very different approaches to how we would get there.
I think with those films, because there's some I like and there's some like okay, like this could have been better.
Yeah.
Uh, there's just tropes of what certain types of people are. So, but they're so used to those, they use them.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a bummer because I think it's equally annoying when you watch like something that kind of makes like a religious trope about somebody where you're like, wait a minute, not
Yeah.
everybody who believes is like that or whatever. And
And
yet,
now every
like,
question is Ned Flanders.
yeah. Although honestly, Ned Flanders is awesome as a character, but but yeah, I agree. It's you know, although honestly, there was a point in time where every comic book store owner was comic book guy. Like I feel like a lot of people may not remember that era, but there was a certain time, at least where I grew up, where like yeah, every comic store owner when I was a kid
Yeah.
that I knew was totally comic book guy. Just saying. Even
Oh
as a
yeah, for
comic
sure.
book fan, I know
Yeah.
now that comic book store owners aren't all like that, but there was a period in time where it was hard to find one that wasn't, you know.
Yeah.
So Frank, you
There is.
don't say like "totally do" or whatever. I can't remember Ned Flanders' phrases.
Oakley dokley,
There we go.
neighbor. But sometimes I will say like I like saying like old words.
Old words are great.
And so it was like my friend who's also a Christian, like he'll make fun of me, like, what are you, Ned Flanders? Because I think I said I was talking about something like something that was bothering me, but since I don't, instead of cussing, uh, I made like this example where I said, it's not like I'm telling kids, hey kids, don't listen to your pastor because he's an old fuddy duddy. And that's when my friend called me that. I was like, fuddy duddy. I was like, like, well, like I don't want to say anything about pastor because even if it's a fake scenario, he's my pastor.
I like Fuddy Duddy. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of good ones, but yeah, it's a tough thing where I don't know. I wish people would just focus on, like, I've found this too with like political disagreements where often people get very vitriolic and kind of crazy about stuff.
Yeah.
And then when you talk to them, like a lot of the time it's like, let's say it's like gun rights or something, right?
Yeah.
I'm a guy, like, I've changed my mind on that in my lifetime, from being very like pro gun ownership to like very much pro regulation. But I have tons of friends who like go to shooting ranges and are like super nice people, and like I don't think they're like immoral or like they're going to end the world or something because of their viewpoint.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I get in conversations with them, they usually start off like my friends are like much more like actual gun owners, and like they like going shooting and stuff like that. They kind of like the culture. They usually are really defensive, and when it comes down to it, like they're not really like actually that opposed to like a lot of the things I think. It's just that they're so used to being on the defense because they feel like they're being demonized all the time.
Yeah.
That they feel like, okay, I got to just hit this head on and be like, yeah, you can't take my guns, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But when I talk to them, like a lot of them are like, yeah, I mean, like we should have better mental health checks for sure,
Yeah.
And then also like a lot of my friends who are like that way are like very much in favor of the idea of like possibly even having stricter licensing, where like you'd have to like almost like do like a driver's test kind of thing.
Okay.
Because most of my friends are serious about firearms, like they actually know what a firearm's capable of. So they're like, yeah, like people should have, like they should be responsible. They like hate irresponsible gun owners. like they'll watch an action movie and get pissed off because they'll be like, dude, that's just not even how you hold your weapon. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, but you can't get to that conversation all the time with people. Like we were talking about with the politics thing too, where it's like, I think a lot of people's issue, I think some people are just being political when they say that and don't really have any issue. But then I do think there's a lot of people who will say like, I don't want politics in my stories. And what they mean is that they like, don't like badly written stories.
Yeah.
And it's like,
that's where I fall in. Like, it makes sense to the story, and if it's just thrown into for no reason, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so that's the part that like I wish people could kind of be more charitable,
Yeah.
I
also
I'd like
think
to see a
it's
world where they
difficult to say like a specific, like, oh, I don't like this comic, but because and I'm not saying it's because of this character, but because that character is in there, automatically, well, you're this and you're that. Like, no, I just don't. I just didn't like it. It didn't appeal to me.
Yeah. And I honestly, this is the part that always mystified me about like the Comicsgate stuff and all of that. It's like, first off, I think it just sucks to be like super toxic to a lot of people. So just up front, like just being toxic to people sucks. But second off, like mainstream comics have always been really formulaic. And so to me, it's like, yeah, like I usually just am kind of shocked that I personally feel like a lot of people who end up in that have like surrounded themselves so much with like mainstream superhero comics that it's like they almost think that like, you know, they're the first people doing indie comics that have like thought like, hey, this stuff's kind of formulaic, like, which is, it's not like really a new thing. Like that's what like Raw was about and Zap was about, and like all of these like underground comic movements. You know, I think Spiegelman was like critiquing, you know, mainstream comics in the 80s like forever, you know. Scott McCloud. I mean, like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of dudes who were like deconstructing the whole thing. And so it's, I don't know, to me it's weird. It's weird to see people kind of critique it when also what they tend to make is like very similar to the mainstream stuff that they're critiquing, which is like, whereas that's the part where I'm like, okay, so if you have a problem with it, then just like stop making the formulaic stuff and make your own stuff and make it better, you know? So that's my main thing with that kind of thing, or that movement, you know? And then also just like, yeah, just because a creator's a woman, you know, like maybe take it easy and be respectful of people, you know? So, because I've definitely seen some like really weird tweets pointed to women creators. I'm a little nervous, honestly, because my sister, you know, is writing a graphic novel. I'm like, is she gonna have to deal with that toxicity, like when we start launching a book? You know, I don't know, because if she does, I'm gonna have to find some people's addresses. This is my sister. You know, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Oh, it totally does.
Dude, we're at a good hour and a half, and I haven't taken my second break or whatever. Oh. I think we should switch topics to something else, but I have no idea what. So, Frank, think about what you want to talk about. I'm gonna get a refill of my cup of coffee. If you're hanging here,
yeah, I'll hang out. You know, we could go grab some water.
Yeah,
I'll think of something.
Oh yeah, and then I also Chase. Do you have like a link to that giant bottle of glue thing or the creator's name? Because I really want to check that out. It sounds hilarious. I'll be right back.
Okay.
So you know what's like torture for me right now?
What?
I have a 1959 Les Paul, like made to spec.
Yeah.
Like it's by Epiphone, but it's a really nice guitar, and it's sitting here like right by my art table, and I can't play it.
Yeah.
Because I have to work. Every time I pass by that thing, I'm like, I want to play guitar. I want to track some music. It's like getting a new bike and not being able to ride it, and you're just like looking at it every time you pass it. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's like the nature of life or something, where you finally get something really cool and you can't really appreciate it because you have to work. I mean, I guess that is probably like that. I mean, that's very like Ecclesiastes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to take joy in our work, right? I mean, and just be thankful for what's provided. But it is one of those funny ironies where I had wanted that guitar for a really long time, and I really enjoy it, and yet I can't use it right now because I have to draw comics, which is also funny to even complain about because I like drawing comics. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have anything like that like haunts you while you're working on comics where you're like, oh man? Like I will say, I also have 2 episodes of Mandalorian haunting me. I'm like, I gotta catch up because I'm like 2 episodes behind. And if Corey Kerr's on a stream, I'm screwed because he's probably seen them.
Yeah.
And the guy is like encyclopedic with his knowledge of Star Wars. So if he's seen it, he'll like be able to spoil the whole plot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything like that?
Well, I have like what I like to do sometimes when I'm working on stuff is just to listen to music and like random music, and I'll listen to like Vanilla Ice, or I'll listen to some church songs. Like it's very mixed. Like,
I noticed MC Hammer.
Yeah, that's been stuck in my head lately because it was the I don't know if you ever saw the old TV show Hammerman. And
I remember
it's very cheesy, and it doesn't hold up. The animation isn't that great.
Which MC Hammer were you singing? Which song?
It was the theme song to that. Because that's the only song that I can. It's so catchy, I can just like say it off the top of my head. So I was singing that on Adam's stream, but I did a video where I drew Hammerman, and I played there's no voiceover about like, oh, this is why I'm drawing this, or like I want to talk about this. It's just the MC Hammer theme, the Hammerman theme song, but me singing over it. So it's like both me and Hammer singing Hammerman,
Nice.
and that's the whole video. So it's been.
Did MC Hammer like bring the copyright hammer at you?
No, that's what I was worried. So like first I had it unlisted, and like okay, nothing's happening. It's like okay, I'm gonna release this.
I think you're probably safe, but still, that's funny. I never got into MC Hammer. I was a weird kid.
Yeah, I like some of it still. Not everything. Like there's like the songs that kind of hit, and those were most of the ones I listened to. But
I do remember I had a friend who was really into it, and for like his birthday, because I was like, I must have been like 4th or 5th grade.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I can out that friend because I've written about him in 2 Stories Book 1, and it can be cross promotional. So if you guys want to read about this friend that liked the MC Hammer, his name was Jake, and he is a character who taught me how to cuss as a young man, and an actual friend of mine to this day.
Okay.
But anyhow, he was really into MC Hammer, and I remember buying the single because you're in like 5th grade, you don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I bought him the single, which this is weird for people who aren't old like Frank and I.
Yeah.
They used to make tapes that were like just a song, and then maybe they'd have like a hidden track or 2, but you could buy them for like $1, And so if you were a poor kid in 6th grade and you couldn't buy somebody a whole album, you buy him a single. And I remember buying him the Addams Family rap.
Oh yeah.
I think for the Addams Family 2, I think there was a rap, or maybe it was the first one. I can't remember.
I remember. Yeah, there was a rap. I remember it was 1 or 2, and wasn't it MC Hammer?
It was MC Hammer.
Yeah.
So while I was not a fan of MC Hammer, I bought a friend MC Hammer.
Yeah.
Because I understood that we have diverse tastes even at that age.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't even remember how the Addams Family rap went.
I don't. I have to listen to it. That might be the next song that's like stuck in my head.
So maybe for your next playlist, you could rock the Addams Family. And I remember that was like the era. I don't remember if it was 2 or 1, but it was definitely, I believe, the movie where Wednesday makes the great, amazing quote of like these Girl Scouts. I think it is 2. Yeah. These Girl Scouts on the trailer for it.
Yeah.
Come up to her and are like, "Would you like to buy some Girl Scout cookies?" And she goes, "Are they made from real Girl Scouts?" And interesting era in time. Joan Cusack is in that movie, I think, too.
Yeah, that's right. She's in the
John Cusack's sister.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite lines from Gomez Adams is in that one, and I will try to use it, or I will want to use it in the real world, but I know I can't because what it implies. But when she says, she meets Gomez Adams and is like, "Oh, you're a lady killer." He's like, "Acquitted."
That's
And like,
hilarious.
oh, I like that you're gonna say like no, because then people will freak out.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, once in I think high school, the lights went out quickly, and I like, oh, as a joke, I wrote red rum on, or maybe it was like before class started, but I wrote red rum on the chalkboard, and if you were like, oh, what's that? Who wrote that? I was like, oh, that's murder backwards. And people thought I was like the satanic kid. Like, no, I just watched. I like The Shining. I was like,
so it's
yeah,
funny.
I had a reputation.
My sister-in-law, like, she finally read The Shining, like the book.
Yeah.
And she got all mad at the movie. She was like, which is funny because I love that movie. I think Kubrick's like amazing, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like because it's just visually, it's Kubrick, right? Who made that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like visually stunning, you know. Like just the aesthetics in that movie. Like there's so much you could learn about sequential storytelling just from like just freeze like one frame in that movie. You're like color, composition, like everything is just stunning, you know. But anyhow, she got really mad because like she can't even watch The Shining now because she's like they didn't get the book. Which I do remember. I think when I was younger, I did read the book, and I remember it got way more into the hotel. And Jack is a much more sympathetic character. It's Jack, right? Like the main dude. I can't remember. Maybe it wasn't Jack. Maybe I'm just thinking Jack is Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson, but I know there's I think it might be Jack because when he's typing the thing,
Yeah, I
it's
think
like it's all work and no play make Jackie a dull boy or something.
Yeah, so I think his character is Jack, but anyhow, it's been a while. But I just remember, like, I do remember when I read it being like, oh, that movie was like nothing like the book. But I never had a moment where it was like, I just can't watch that movie. Yeah. I've had that with books before. I'm trying to think of one that did such a bad job. Well, like, close to that would be like the Avatar movie, where it was like The Last Airbender.
Oh, okay.
Like that was a similar feeling where it's like I don't think I'll ever watch that movie again, nor could I sit through it because it was just horrible. But like the cartoon is amazing, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of the last time I saw like a movie based on a book where I was just like, oh, they just botched it, you know? I mean, I've definitely seen multiple attempts to do Sherlock Holmes well that failed very horribly.
The one with Robert Downey Jr. was somewhat close. Actually, I will Watson because Watson they usually have him as this older pudgy guy, but like Watson was like in the military. He was.
Yeah, they finally made him a little younger. I would say those movies were pretty far off from the books.
Yeah, like yeah, it wasn't exactly like the books, but like at least they gave Watson.
But yes, they were closer with Watson. Like I love the BBC like Panorama series. That's like Jeremy Brett. Those are like my favorite Sherlock Holmes. And I think they're from the 80s. They used to play them on like, what is it? Mystery Theater or something.
Not is it I might be thinking of
like AMC. I think it was AMC, like Mystery
Yeah.
Theater or something. And I
yeah.
think it had.
Masterpiece.
Yeah, it might have been Masterpiece Theater,
Masterpiece Theater.
but I know they had Edward Gorey. Like they had an animation by Edward Gorey that would introduce it.
Oh, okay.
So I think I'll have to look that up. Like which TV show had like the Edward Gorey animation? I think it was Mystery Theater, but anyhow, or it might have been Masterpiece Theater because I know it did have like a dude at the beginning being like, "When so and so wrote this," like.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so that's my favorite Sherlock Holmes though, like the BBC Panorama.
Okay.
But you are correct in the sense that the one thing they got wrong that wasn't very accurate to the books was Watson was like this old dude who was older than Sherlock,
Yeah.
The one with what's his name? Cumberbatch got a good Watson too.
Yeah,
good
yeah.
age for Watson.
I was gonna say that too.
Yeah, and I enjoyed those, even though those took a lot of liberties.
Yeah, because they made it more modern in this world, so like they changed things. But I did enjoy them. Like I liked that Sherlock that he was just like kind of like torture Watson just to see just to figure something out.
Yeah, and I liked the kind of spin on it, almost like he's like an Aspie type,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty awesome. So
yeah,
those were fun. But yeah, I've seen a million times where they don't get it right. They always have him in like a hunting cap and like,
Yeah, and because I remember like reading that, like why he wore that. I think it was like in the books or something, or maybe it was in a show, but in that time frame, it was the time for that. like it was like a winter hat, so he would wear it. He might have worn it or something like that, but then they just had it that he always wore it. Like,
dude, we have Chase saying the cartoonist on Instagram, the person who did the giant bottle of glue. I'm gonna write this down because like the problem is sometimes I'll forget to like check my chats after the fact,
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put Sunny Day Mare.
Sunny Day Mare.
Yeah, like Nightmare but Daymare, and then the comic is Tough. They're remaking Tough to Be Free to Free to Be Tough. Interesting. Okay. And then my favorite Stanley Kubrick film is Barry Lyndon. I watched it several times in preparation for my graphic novel because it had a scope and mood that I wanted to bring to the book.
Okay.
Cool. Chase, if you have anything, any sort of preview online or something of that, might be a little too early, but I'd love to see what you're working on.
I know Chase has some artwork on his Instagram. I can't think of the Instagram on the top of his head. So Chase, if you don't put the name of that your Instagram in the chat, so people can check it out. But like I was looking at some of his artwork, and this is really good stuff. Like it's like,
I feel like I've seen Chase's work before too.
It's like fantastic.
But I feel like a terrible human being because I can't remember it off the top of my head. Yeah. But I'm gonna check it out when I get off stream. Or if you want to throw something in the chat, so you could just say your Instagram username or something.
Yeah, I think that's what you did last time. So I just kind of okay, what is it? So I looked it up.
Yeah,
because I can't think of it right now.
If he throws the username in there, then we could, Frank's a mod, so he might be able to actually put a link in there.
Yeah.
In the chats for you. because that's the future. And Frank was more technologically savvy than myself. He was the first. I actually just heard a stream that was talking about this, where they were saying a lot of people who become mods are just the people who are like, hey, you need a mod. Can I mod? And you're like, yeah. Like, which is actually pretty awesome, you know? Although, honestly, the nice thing about you, Frank, is like you're always on stream. You're always hanging out, and you're always pretty respectful and nice to people. So it's like, it's funny, though. You sound like you were a bit like of let's see, what would that be called? Like an edgelord in high school?
I might have, yeah. We didn't have that term, but like,
I don't think edgelord existed because like the internet really didn't exist. Because I think we're around the same age range, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I know like for me, when I was in high school, I didn't even have a computer at home. And I'd go to friends' houses who had computers, and we would go in chat rooms, and like it was like, I think like Yahoo chats or something like that, where like they had, or maybe it was AOL, like had like chat rooms or something. So you dial up, do AOL, and then you go in these like chat rooms that would be like themed like music. It's like message boards kind of.
Yeah.
And they'd be like themed by music. So we'd be like, okay, we're going to go in this punk chat room. And Chase will find this funny because Chase, I think, probably has similar feelings about Green Day as I do, or did at the time, where I was like, I very much hated them, especially when a bunch of people I knew who like had no love or interest in punk rock were like, this is the most punk rock thing ever. And they're like, I love punk rock. And you're like, you don't know what you love here, you know?
Yeah.
But anyhow, I was a snarky little kid, and I feel like I wasn't alone on this, because I think this is how a lot of early internet usage happened for like people my age. We'd just go in the chat rooms and then go into like this hardcore punk room, and they'd be like, yeah, Agnostic Front's amazing. And we'd be like, whatever, man, Green Day's the most hardcore band there is. And we'd just be doing it just literally to troll. But we didn't know what trolling was at the time.
Yeah.
We're just like kids who'd like call and do like the prank call or whatever, you know? It's that age where you're just like, you know. But I do remember getting really a lot of kicks at like, 14 or whatever, seeing like people just lose their minds, being like, they're not punk rock. And we'd be like, whatever, man. What you like pop punk? Like, you probably like pop punk like Crass, and they'd be like, Crass isn't pop punk. Be like, whatever, man. You can't handle the hardcoreness of Green Day. That kind of thing. Chase can see where I'm coming from on that, I think. So I've been a bit of an edgelord before there were edgelords. I feel like in high school, you just kind of are an edgelord.
Yeah.
If you're a kid, I don't know. Should tell you about our show, Frank. We did the show. And at the time I was in this band that was kind of doing like pop indie stuff. So like we sounded a little bit like we were trying to be like Weezer's Blue Album or something, like that kind of sound.
Yeah.
And we got invited to play at this like goth club that had like industrial goth bands. And so we brought milk and we bought a bunch of milk and cookies, like a giant box of it. And I think it was because we were also like getting really into oh my gosh, now I'm gonna blank out on his name, but we had just watched a documentary because the movie wasn't out, like that Man on the Moon movie.
Yeah.
Now I'm blanking out on the comedian.
Andy Kaufman?
Oh yeah. So we had just watched like a documentary on Kaufman, and we're like, we should do that milk and cookie thing at like the goth club. Cause like it's a bunch of goths and they need like a kid's happy story time, and they need milk and cookies. So we ordered all these, like my sister like hand baked all of these cookies. Like, so we just had like a truckload of cookies, and then we contracted a local dairy, and we bought like a bunch of pallets that they like buy for schools,
Yeah.
like of like the little milk bottles, like little milk jugs. And we played the show, and then like halfway through our set, we were like, we want to stop because everybody here seems really sad. They're all wearing black. Everybody's really sad about life. And I get it. You're listening to Skinny Puppy and Nine Inch Nails, and I understand. I like them too. They make okay albums. But we need to chill here. We're going to read Curious George, and we're going to pass out milk and cookies. And the funny thing was, we did it because we thought it would like piss everybody off because we're teenagers.
Yeah.
And we just thought it was funny. But actually, like, we ended up having like half those people come to like every show of ours afterwards, like, because they were like, "Oh yeah, we like milk and cookies and kids' books,"
Yeah.
And I remember that being like an enlightening thing. It's so weird how cliquey everything used to be too, because there used to be like the goths, and then there were the punks, and then there were like punks and metalheads, and like it like. A lot of these factions just didn't cross, and it's kind of weird because we were all just like a bunch of weird outcasts.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, so Chase said the name, so I'm gonna go grab the link, and then I'll pop it in, and I'll be right back on the stream.
Oh, I love it. And then
So
Chase also said, I had an idea for a t-shirt that's the Crass logo, but it's bubblegum pink and sparkly with glitter like a 2000s era's pop. That would be pretty punk. That would be. I love that idea. Frank is grabbing the link to put in the chats. I'm curious what Frank is working on right now, too. I think Frank's frozen temporarily, because I think that might be because he left to check the interwebs. Maybe. Perhaps Frank is working on Captain Anarchy. That might be what's happening. Ah, there it is. I had lost touch of my rolling ruler. This thing's amazing. Anyone who wants to do inking will find these little like architect's rulers to be very helpful. I think I'm following you on Instagram, Chase, so I'm going to check out, but I'm also going to write that down. Oh, man. Chase is making some pretty good jokes here. She said, crass merchandise at Claire's. I think that's hilarious. I still remember, like, during the Trump presidency, everybody kept running these editorials that were like a crass cover. Because it's like this image of like the Statue of Liberty, like covering their eyes. And it was like, I think it was on like the New York Times or something. And it was insane to me that a bunch of people, it went kind of viral online and stuff. And it was like, you guys realize that's like a crass album cover? Like, anyhow, I thought that was interesting. All right, there is a link in the chats. I'm kind of excited. So are there comic pages on there, Chase? I would hope so. I also have to keep an eye to see if when Frank hops back. Because I'm in this weird scenario where I can like see chat here, but then over here is my Ah, there he is. And then he's hustling Anna Raub too, which is good. It's Raub, right?
Rob,
Okay.
like rob a store. Rob.
Oh, Rob. Okay, I thought it was
Rob.
Raub. Okay.
Yeah, I think I pronounce it Raub just because I see the U and I want to do it like that. So like I train myself to say Rob, but
Yeah,
it'll still
that's
come out Rob sometimes. So.
that's smart. I
She doesn't mind, but like I want to get people's names right. I don't want to.
I do too. But I'm really bad with them. It's funny, I'm really bad with pronunciation too. Like my wife has had some pretty funny times like trying to teach me the proper pronunciation of basically anything Japanese.
Okay.
And the weird thing for me is like and I've noticed this particularly with Japanese where my struggle is, phonetically, like I could probably start getting better at Spanish because like there's a similar vowel treatment, like in
Mhm.
pronunciation.
Yeah.
And then there's just a couple things that are like way different, but not outside of the family of language. But when it comes to Japanese, it's like there's words where I hold on a syllable because that's just what you would do. You would do it in Spanish, you would do it in English, you would just hold on that syllable, a little bit. You'd have just like a little bit longer. It's just a natural, like you're sounding out the syllable. But a lot of Japanese words are like every single sound is like supposed to be the exact same length. So it's
Okay.
interesting. It took me forever to just figure out that like manga is manga. Like,
Okay.
so anybody saying manga is like completely mispronouncing it.
Yeah.
It's manga. But it's like it's weird to think because it's like, yeah, like if that were a Spanish word or an English word, it would be manga
Yeah.
or manga. It's I don't know, it's weird. So anyhow, I'm terrible at pronouncing Japanese, and my wife is fluent in it, and so it's like I'm kind of bummed about that. Like I haven't had like there's movies like The King's Speech where it's like this guy who has a stutter, and then like he's taught and he learns how to like not stutter,
Yeah.
or like uh what's the classic one? My Fair Lady, right? Where it's like this lady who talks like this and then is trained by a linguist and suddenly is like speaking eloquently. And
Yeah.
I had this daydream that that's how it would go when I get corrected on pronunciation of Japanese, but instead it's just been me like having a mental block and not being able
Yeah.
to process new pronunciations. Although I really hope my son is able to like kind of pick it up
Pick
more
it up.
fluently at a young age because it's way easier if you grow up with it.
Yeah.
So
Pick it up.
that was my rant about how bad I am at pronouncing things. But I will try to remember it's Rob, not Raub. Raub is a little strange sounding, so I can understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Rob,
Rob.
Rob.
Rob. Yeah. It's
Gosh,
still tricky.
I just got to think like robbing a store
Yeah.
or, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But anyhow, you guys should be following Anna. And Anna, my
Yeah.
pronunciation rant, feel free to
She,
roast me
she
about.
might be streaming a little bit more often now because I forgot to mention this on the show because but I was telling Anna before the show. It's not a secret. I can say it here. So it's
Wait, are you
I'm g-
dropping an exclusive? Exclusive?
I'm gonna be gone for a little bit from the Turaco because I joined the church choir and we are practicing for April. We're gonna have our very first Bible conference from our church. So the first night we're gonna have the choir sing. So
Nice.
we're
What are
gonna start
you?
practice mid-February. So probably after next week. So and they practice on Mondays and different times in the
Awesome.
week.
So that's an exclusive, you guys. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Tarako
So
might
Anna
be on
might
hiatus.
but Anna might just stream on her channel, and just so you know, uh, what she'll stream. She might do like 3 hour streams
Yeah. It's
or
like a
whatever.
box of chocolates, really.
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, you guys should be following Anna. So now I'm curious. So have you done choir before?
Yeah. In like past like conferences or like special events like that, but maybe like twice,
Okay.
and it's usually
And
like I'm editing in the background. So
what range do you sing in? Are you like super deep?
um, it just depends. Like I try to do deep, but I can't. There's some that are like so deep. I just
So you're
like
kind of
it's
in
just
like the middle.
yeah.
Got it.
But the guy that like
Yeah, because there's
he
some dudes
runs it.
who'll
He
get
would
like
know how to.
low.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a couple of guys like that. They
Yeah.
just have a naturally deep voice.
Yeah, I always kind of envy that type of voice because I'd imagine that would make for really good radio,
Yeah,
where it's like, hello, how's it going, ladies and
yeah.
gentlemen? This is the show where we talk late at night about conspiracies and aliens. Right? Wouldn't that be? I don't know.
Yeah.
We should do a stream like that, Frank. What do you think about that?
Just go off on conspiracies. Welcome.
No, just
We're
like
gonna talk
talk.
about
Yeah, let's talk about like so the thing
just
about
talk.
Bigfoot, Frank. If you don't watch where you're going, you might run into Bigfoot. And people are trying to cover it up. The information about Bigfoot. What are your thoughts on that, Frank?
Well, I think that you gotta be careful when you're out there walking in the woods,
Yep.
because you never know when Bigfoot's gonna get you. And when he gets you, he doesn't let go.
Yep, this is true. There's a lot of stories and reports of Sasquatches wildly roaming the forest, and yeah. So I think we could do that, or just like talk about economics, tell people fall asleep, be like the S&P and 500 and the Dow have dipped to 3 points, and traffic's looking kind of quite crazy.
Yeah. We could read the Great Gatsby on the side, like Kaufman.
Mm-hmm. Get yelled at by someone who thinks we're spreading heresy for the Great Gatsby. How okay, Frank,
Mm-hmm.
I want to know about like I don't know, after high school kind of experiences.
Oh, after high school? Oh, let's see.
What was your life like directly after high school? If you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember. It was
Like you just graduated.
just
Where do you go?
graduated. Oh yeah, you know what? That's I had started to go to college, and I ended up dropping out, but that was my first experience in college, and that's where I learned more about the internet, and I would just get on there, so get on chat rooms or just look up stuff and find out like all this cool information, and going to the classes and talking to the teachers. It was it wasn't bad, but like I ended up just like spending just too much time on the internet that like I didn't go to class. So I just dropped out.
Oh, okay, got it. So you kind of like lost focus. That
Yeah,
happens. I mean, that happens to the best
but
of
I would
us,
check
you know.
out the library a lot, and I would be there, and like I'd print out stuff or check out their books, and like, oh, this looks some interesting things.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Were you like working at the time you were going to college?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't working. Um,
So like
let's see.
student loans or
Yeah, I think I was. Was it a financial aid?
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
So I was using that, and at that time, like it was just like I didn't have to pay anything back,
Oh, that's cool.
and
I envy that a little bit.
yeah, I wish they still did that. Because
I'm
eventually I did go back to not that long ago, like I think 2018.
uh-huh.
I went to a trade school here,
Uh-huh.
and I had like some student loans, and some of it I paid off, and some other ones are I thought they had given me forgiveness because I had applied for it, and they're like, "Oh, you qualify and you're getting forgiveness," and then like now it's like forgiveness has run out. You gotta pay. I'm like, what? That wasn't forgiveness. You lied to me.
Oh, this is true. Chase also just said that you should have Gene Simmons guest on Tarako while you're gone.
That won't be fun because I would want to be there.
Yeah, I have to say I feel like that is such a convincing Gene Simmons that it would be really hard to miss out on it. Like if you guys haven't experienced Gene Simmons, you should check out Tarako first. I think that was the
Okay.
first appearance in our circle of Gene Simmons.
No, it
And then
was
the Halloween episode
yeah, it's the Halloween.
of the Artcasters. But I think Gene Simmons might have appeared first on Tarako, right? Or no? Was that on
No,
Ronnie's
it
channel?
wasn't Tarako. It was Crimson Owl Comics.
Okay, it was Ronnie's channel.
It was
Sorry. For
Ronnie's
some
channel.
reason, I thought that was on Tarako. So that needs to happen on Tarako
It needs
still.
to happen on the Tarako, and when it does happen, I will be there because I want to be there for that.
I kind of think
I
I
feel
should.
that is more of a seasonal thing. So
Yeah.
it for someone who does wear costumes like that on a more regular basis, it is a hassle putting on
Yes.
stuff like that, and especially Scott, like he puts on this whole armor, like, and I know what it is to put on armor
But what do you
and
mean,
having to.
Scott? All I know is like we had
Sorry,
Gene
sorry,
Simmons
not
on.
Scott. Our friend Gene Simmons, because that would be
It.
hot for him.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna break kayfabe for a second though, because I do think it would be really fun to do that. But like, if we do that again, I want to be like the promoter guy. And it's just like, look, Gene will talk to you right now, but that's about all he's gonna give you about 5 seconds, and that's about all you're gonna get here. It's 5 seconds,
That would be great.
and that's basically all I'm gonna do. Because I
That's
can't
a
do. Scott is also very talented at that. It's kind of amazing.
yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah, and I love that he never broke character
no, I mean that was the fun thing. Like
both
even on
times. Yes,
Artcasters, at first I was just like, hey, you should probably like just kayfabe and like do the intro like that. And then I just
and he's like,
realized
no,
like,
the
oh,
whole
he's
show.
just gonna go the whole episode. Like
Yeah,
it was great. It was excellent. Yeah, yeah. That takes talent, man. I feel like
yeah.
Scott was an actor in another life or something. So that's cool. So you're gonna do choir.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they have you kind of doing like middle, so you're not doing like I can't see, this is how little I know about singing in choir, because I used to when I was a kid. Like I did a couple choir performances. Like we did the Messiah
Okay.
at the elementary school I went to.
Yeah.
And that was fun.
I'm not
So
sure
I
what
still
song
remember.
we're doing yet. Usually, but yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, like I'm not sure what song we're doing yet. Usually they try to do like a big one. I know we did one time was Naja, her song. She did a song about faith, but not trusting like phony preachers like that they just put on a show.
Interesting.
I'm trying to remember what it was called, but like yeah, I think that there's another one. I haven't. There's a few other ones, but I think I've only like been in it twice. So,
It's kind of a fun
like
experience,
their
like
party
singing
usually
in a group,
goes all out.
you
Oh yeah.
know? Like there's
Yeah,
a joy to it. But it does require a lot of practice.
yeah, and like I don't sing very well, but I've learned some techniques from them, so I think that helped a little bit. And also the
Have you
choir
learned the
leader.
watermelon trick?
I don't think so. What's
This
that?
is from when I was very little, when we had to be in choirs for like chapel or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I had a mom once. I was nervous I was going to forget what to sing. And they said, hey, if you're up there and you forget what to sing, you just go watermelon, watermelon, watermelon. But you don't actually say it, you just mouth it. And yeah, I forgot a couple lines and did that, and no one knew. So just throwing it out there. That works unless you have a moment where you're supposed to solo.
You're solo, yeah.
Yeah, because if it goes to you and you're solo and you're going watermelon with no sound, just going, people might think that was strange.
I was like, hey, his mic went out.
That's cool though. That's kind of a fun thing to do. And I do think like choirs are a really neat thing. Just like there is something really unique and cool about the sound of combined voices.
Yeah.
Just making music together. It's really pretty. Can be, depending. Oh my goodness. This is the panel that won't die. How's your progress coming?
Fine right now. I'm just drawing little capping goggles in the panel, but I don't even know if it's gonna be for a comic. It's practicing drawing.
Nice.
I already put the 2 copies together, so that's already done.
Chase is saying some really cool stuff in the chats. Too bad my life after graduating high school was 2 years working at a comic book shop and then the plague. Oh wow! So you're like just got out of high school and then were working in a comic shop and then just boom. Wow. Luckily, being indoors for so long led me writing and now drawing a graphic novel, which is helping me wait out the plague. Yeah. You know, I don't want to minimize people's experience with it, you know, because like I have close friends who like literally have like had family members like die. So and I've been fortunate enough to like it hasn't hit that close yet. So but I don't want to minimize it. But I will say, that book, Not Death But Love, that my sister and I got a deal for, that was made like I was stuck working from home And it was like right after the pandemic hit, and 2 Stories was already a go, but I had gotten all the files to the printer, and Jacobs, I think, might have been out in the pitch process at that point. And then we were getting some rejections while the pitches were going around, but they were like really promising rejections where it was like, okay, we love this art, but like we don't publish this type of story. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, so the feedback would be like, hey, like keep us in touch if like you have a different plot, like, because we don't do auto bio or we don't do like slice of life stuff, we do this genre. So anyhow, we wanted to take advantage of some of those responses, like my literary agent and I, and that's when I reached out to my sister and was like, hey, because my literary agent was like, hey, we were talking about it, like what could we pitch these people? We were like, we love it, what else do you have, And so we built that whole pitch, and a lot of that was thanks to COVID, because my sister was stuck at home. She's a stay-at-home mom too, so but still, like, we're all pretty much stuck at home. It was like 2 weeks of me being stuck here, and having really irregular hours at my day job too, because I'd be up till like midnight, like working on stuff for work. But then I also had the luxury of like, an hour here or there where I could work on my own stuff. So we built that whole pitch, and like, I don't know if that would have happened without that pause.
Yeah.
And also, I think Frank and I have talked about this before, but it's like, I do think cartoonists are also kind of uniquely, maybe not uniquely, because I think internet folks, but also definitely cartoonists, we're kind of built to weather a lot of isolation.
Yeah. And I know, I think my comic career started and boomed during the pandemic. Captain Goggles definitely came during that.
So do you
I think
think
that
that
was the
might have
most
had something to do with sort of being by yourself and having to
Yeah.
kind of focus on, hey, I got this time.
Yeah. It was like,
Yeah.
I think we talked about it on, I forget which stream because we've been going back and forth on people's streams.
Yeah.
But that,
Someone's.
the, what's that show? Not Outer Limits. The Twilight Zone episode where the guy's like, I had time.
Oh yeah, I think that was on this stream. I think that was one we had Adam on here. I think.
Okay, yeah. That's what I was trying to
So,
remember because I know Adam was there, but I don't remember like it was his or yours. But yeah,
but I'll say
that
if anybody's digging back to like find that stream, just if it's not on my channel with the one that Adam appeared on, then definitely scope out the ones I've appeared on Adam's, which I think is one so far. I think I've been on the channel. So, but I will probably do more because it was super fun.
yeah. But yeah, that was like, oh, I have time. I can work on this comic, and then like my phone broke. Like no, but I was able to get a new one like the next day. So from there, like I started working on comics and started. I got published in the 9 Volt anthology during that. So like that's when I made my first Captain Courage story. Like I had the character, but I never did anything with it. It was always like, oh, someday I'll turn it into a comic, or someday I might do something with this, and I'm like, well, that's some days now. So yeah.
Yeah, I do think basically, like, as terrible as things get in life, I do think there's some value to, I think Scott was talking about this on stream too, a couple streams back, but he was saying those leadership classes he's been taking and stuff. One of the ideas is like extreme ownership.
Yes.
And I do think there's a value to that when it comes to like trying to find opportunity in chaos is a really good thing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean to be opportunistic, because I think that can be really bad. Like, because like opportunism can sometimes mean at like the cost of other people. And I don't think that's right. I think Frank and I would agree on that, because we're both pretty much strong believers in the idea of like treating others the way we'd like to be treated. In theory, I don't think either of us do it perfectly, but I think that's what we'd think would be like the ideal, for humans.
Yeah.
But there is a benefit to like trying to find opportunity in bad circumstances.
Yes.
And there's also a value to trying to find a lesson in bad or good circumstances. And like, yeah, I definitely think the pandemic, while there's horrible things about it, I'm writing a whole, I've spent like 5 years, over 5 years, like working on these 2 comics that the primary focus is talking openly about mental illness. So believe me when I say I'm aware of like what isolation can do that's not good to people, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, like as an artist, I think there might be advantages. There might be some good that comes out of it. Because I think sometimes when people sit by themselves, sometimes they have to confront things that are really healthy to confront. Like the idea, like what you were just describing, Frank, where it's like, if you're a cartoonist and you're like, oh, someday, and then you're finally given the time and the day.
Yeah.
It's like, it really does make you confront, the reality of like, oh, do I want to do this if I have time? Because here's the time, I do think there's some value to that. Like, it's unfortunate that it has to be during a pandemic, but I think there's going to be my point is, I think there's probably going to be a lot of really cool art that's been done during this time,
Yeah.
Chris just said nothing like some forced isolation to make you figure out what you really feel passionate about working on. Yeah. And also just figure out stuff about life. There's a lot of people who just stay busy and don't think, and that can be good. It's good to be busy, but it's also good to have moments of like reflecting and being like, hey, what do I want to do here?
Yeah.
So that's my really long-winded thing about that. By the way, Kawagua, if you want to hop on, feel free. I know you got a young one sleeping though, so if you aren't able.
Oh yeah, this late.
But yeah, if you want to hop on for a bit, I'm probably going to be on for, I'd say like 30 minutes more, maybe. Frank, I also don't want you to feel obligated, but I like having you here, but I also don't want you to feel obligated, because I know on these streams sometimes you get sucked in and you're like spending hours longer than you intended. So I don't want to be contributing to that, but I also enjoy hanging out with you. So
I'm
it's up to you, but
I'm enjoying the conversation, and I actually didn't even realize how late it was, but right now Anna is working late, so when she gets out, I might end up talking to her anyway, or might not. Might end up just, she wants to work on stuff, and I'll just like, okay, I can go sleep and not worry. Because I was gonna talk to her about some stuff, but like it's nothing that important, just like Warpanger 7 stuff, but stuff that can wait. So, but yeah.
Nice. Let's see.
We did watch and we talked about it on the show with Jim. We watched Pleasure. I've seen Pleasure Beast before. She hadn't seen it, so we watched it together.
Like on stream?
not on the stream, but there's um this website that she used to use to watch like anime with groups. So it's like, oh well,
Okay.
let's watch this together. So we're just like in a chat but watching the video, and
Okay.
it's like, oh, this is like a new experience because like giving little commentaries like while watching it, like, oh, like this scene is this, or here's my scene, or oh, that's Josh's scene, and like
That is a
so,
funny movie,
so
dude.
yeah.
That song, like this is the thing that people who
Secrets.
don't yeah, keeping secrets.
Secrets.
Um, but a lot of people will almost miss that about Jim's cartoons, like the fact that like he's a really hilarious musician, like, but he's also really talented. But it's just like
Yeah.
he makes amazing songs that are also like filled with just so much humor. And that Pleasure Beast song after that movie was stuck in my wife and I's head for like 3 weeks,
Yeah.
where I'd like get home from work and just be like, "You think you know me, boy?" You know, like that kind of thing. You don't own me. Gonna be your pleasure beast. It's just
Yeah.
it's awesome. So Chris said there were some impressive indie shorts I saw early on where people took advantage of empty streets to film post-apocalyptic scenes. Yeah, dude. If you wanted to film, I mean, yeah, if you wanted to film like Times Square empty, the pandemic was the one time you could get that shot and not have to like CG it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some haunting footage that I've seen of like Tokyo just barren, you know, and you're like, this is,
Wow.
I mean, that's Tokyo, but it was just like, like you could see like a paper bag
Tumbleweed.
just blowing. Yeah. All right. Well, we've been going for over 2 hours, so I'm gonna take my
Oh wow.
little 30-second, and I gotta finish this background. These trees will not shade themselves. They have to happen. So this is the life of cartoonist, you guys. Actually, it's not
That's right.
like anything worth complaining about because it's a fun conversation and it's fun to hang out
Yeah.
with friends. All right, I'll be right back. And I do want to say maybe I can put, I wonder if I can like have him
Oh,
hang out,
the
have him
Corey
hang
man.
out somehow.
CK.
Okay, so Corey is going to fill in for me. Does that work?
Yeah.
A little bit. Okay, so he'll
You can
fill
leave
in
it too.
while I'm gone. All right, I'll be back in 20 seconds.
All right. Cool. I just like the Corey sticker. Hey Corey. Hope you like the suit. I'll check the chats. Let's see. Oh, okay. That's a Corey Kerr in a mech sticker, drawn and designed by yours truly. And I'm actually doing a little mini comic based on that. That takes place in the Captain Goggles and Mask Woman world. So I think I landed on a title, so I'm gonna call it Resistance, a Warp Anchor 7 story. Which I should get back to those pages. So I'm gonna close what I'm doing here and work on page 2. So let me go grab that. Where is my file? That's right here. Boom.
Okay. So just in case Chris does want to hop on, I just sent him a link. And then but if again, like I really want to be clear, like that's just if you want to hop on. And if not, I'm still curious if you're working on stuff and what you're working on. So let me know. Yeah. He said he would, but doesn't want to risk waking baby. That's kind of what I thought. But just in case. I have a feeling like that stream would be really short, where you would have Chris say like 2 sentences and you hear this, wah, and he'd disappear. Which we've all been through that. Like that was a. Although luckily they're out of the woods on like the well, Chris, maybe you can let us know. Are you guys out of the woods on the crazy sleep times? That is one of those things. It's like kind of like you hear from people who've like been to war. And like there's things I think they experience that like no one could relate to unless they've been to war.
Yeah.
There is definitely that with parenting, where it's like there's a thing you go through with sleep that like no one but like a new parent, like no one who hasn't been a new parent could even remotely imagine. Yeah. And you'll know that it's something parents can imagine because anytime somebody actually has their kid, usually it's like a very sympathetic conversation from the people who've had kids. Because it's like, you know how little of sleep these people are running on.
Oh, yeah.
Almost the same amount of sleep as Frank and Adam with their 16-hour live streams.
Yeah.
Adam's fun to talk to, though.
He is, and that's what's it can be engaging because like, oh, this is a really good conversation. But I think it was last week where I went 2 days without sleeping because I was hopping from stream to stream, and then I was having conversations aside with either Adam or Anna. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep. Then like, oh, it's like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I gotta go do stuff at church today. I'll see when I get back. I couldn't get back to sleep. So for 2 days, like I really need to get some sleep, guys. I can't be on tonight.
I like
what I got a couple of hours, and then I went back on another stream. So like I need to.
I like what Chris said here. He said 24-hour comic book days were just training wheels for parenthood. Yeah, that's true. You can kind of see how David got so good at 24-hour comics because he did the parent thing first. I wonder if that like prepped him, where he's just like, because Kevin Cross and I did a 24-hour sitting with David when we were in Portland.
Oh, okay.
That's actually one of the how we met him. And holy crap, guy's a machine. Like there's a documentary about it that you can check out, where David Chelsea, he's like the king of 24-hour comics. But I will tell you, being the guy who's like sleep deprived, you haven't slept in like 12 hours. You're like, at least for me, I'm a pretty slow artist. So, and it was like my first time doing a 24-hour comic. I'd look over and like David's like on page 23. And cool as a cucumber. Just like totally prepped, like knows what he's doing. Like, and his comic looks better than anyone there. And I'm just like, and it makes coherent sense. Like it's actually a pretty good story. Yeah. Anyhow, if you have no respect for David Chelsea, which anyone out there probably with sense would have respect for him because of his mastery of perspective, you know?
Yeah.
But like, holy crap, sit next to the guy at a 24-hour comic challenge. I will say though, I've had similar feelings doing late nights with Chris, where like we'd be working on freelance illustrations. Because like back when I was just straight freelance, Chris would like come over and like we'd hang out till like 5 a.m, just like working on freelance stuff, because we were on like weird schedules. And he's quick. I mean, Chris works hard on what he does for sure, but there's a reason he gets a lot of storyboard work, Very quick, very accurate. So my wife is too. She's actually really quick. Chris can attest to that too, because he's been in classes with because we all knew each other in college,
Yeah.
And like before her and I started dating, we were like in art classes together, and there's this like awesome girl that I found very attractive who's just like sitting next to me and just kicking my ass at drawing. Like she's so good. Like and I remember that very vividly, being like, I like this. She's better than me at art. But she's quick too. Chris said that's the thing. I can do it, but no cucumber coolness for me. At a certain hour, I turned into a delirious hot mess. Yeah, that was the weird thing about David, was like he was just kind of charming through and through the whole experience, and like also kind of mentory and kind of coachy to like the people that were there too. It's kind of weird. Very, very cool ability.
I've never done a 24-hour comic. I know Adam is teased about doing it on a stream.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, we'll do it for 12 hours, take a break, and then do another 12 hours. And
so I have become convinced that my initial hesitation is actually right. Because I'm not David Chelsea. So like what I make in a 24-hour comic, I'd have to do it for fun. Yeah. And the thing is, if I'm going to spend 24 hours working on a comic, I'd rather just get more progress done on the graphic novels that I got to do.
Yeah.
So to me, I would be down on a weekend of some kind to do 24 hours of working on comics.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'd want to do the traditional 24-hour comic challenge, at least for a couple of years. Because I'd have to be like freed up of comic projects to like justify that, Yeah. But if we did a stream where we all worked on comics for 24 hours, I might be down for that. Although it'd have to be on a weekend.
Yeah, I know. Adam was telling me like, but you'd have to stick with the rules, and like it can't be a Captain Gago story that you're working on. Like that's I need to work on the stories. So like if I'm gonna do a 24-hour comic, I want to get some progress done.
Yeah, because there are rules to a 24-hour comic.
Yeah, you have to do the think up the story on the spot.
I think
no planning.
I think there is a little bit. Check out the documentary about David Chelsea. You can just Google David Chelsea 24-hour comic. He goes through the rules and stuff.
Okay.
But and I'm trying to remember. I think he's one of the founders of it too. So like, definitely a good source. You know what? Okay. Actually, that would be a good Artcasters.
Yeah. I should have him on the truck if I have no way of getting a hold of him.
Yeah, I should see if he'd be down to just do just one where he runs through the rules of the 24-hour comic, tips, all of that,
Yeah.
Because he was like a master of it, so why not? Get it straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, I know some people have done it where
But I do think you
like,
can kind of have a rough idea
yeah.
going in of what your story is going to be. I do, from what I've heard, I think you can have that. You probably, I don't think, should have like
Storyboards or
like roughs and stuff like that.
roughs.
Chris might actually be more familiar with it because I think Chris has had a much more successful time at it than I have. Again, like I've done them, but I usually just get like a page or two done. Which you can see why, because it's like I've been working for 2.5, going on 3 hours, and like I'm almost done with the panel, you know. So do the math on how long this page took, you know. Yeah. It just takes a long time for me. I'm a very slow artist, you know.
Yeah.
But Frank, I think you'd enjoy the challenge. It might be a fun. The thing that I have heard as a positive about the 24-hour comic thing is it does kind of force you outside of your box, and it forces you to loosen up a lot. And I have heard of people like kind of coming across some kind of weird breakthrough and maybe coming up with a story they wouldn't have otherwise thought of through it, you know?
Okay.
So sure, there's value to it, but for me it feels like I'm trying to think of an equivalent.
Maybe
but I'd hang with you guys while you do a 24-hour
Captain Anarchy takes shape.
Yeah, Captain Anarchy should happen there, and he should actually be like, okay, so I have your plot already, dude. You want to hear it?
All right.
Okay, so there's this kid who like is constantly making the cool S, like he's carving it into his school desk.
Oh, okay.
And something's gonna happen when he's like in class. He's kind of being like, you know, rebellious to his teacher. And there's some special desk that he's like assigned to. Maybe it's made of like an ancient wood that was like cursed. Like it's a desk that's cursed by the souls of, yeah, it's a desk that's cursed by like the souls of all the terrible students that have gone on to be like murderers and all sorts of stuff that were assigned to that desk. Like
it was Hitler's desk originally, and then
yeah, like it was Hitler's art table in like art school or something. But anyhow, like, so yeah, like it's somehow cursed, but also the reason it's cursed is because like the wood it's crafted from. What's up?
So we always go back to Nazis when it comes to.
We don't, Frank.
I guess it's me.
Don't bring me
I
here.
am the one that's there.
I'm like, you're isn't there like an internet rule about that or something? Or it's always going to come back to Hitler in a conversation. But anyhow, like so yeah, like the desk, like the reason all these people have gone on to be like terrible people who've been like assigned to this desk and then they become like worse students afterwards is because like there was a tree. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you have like this tree that was really part of like some evil ritual or something like that. And it's got to be like super like Lord of the Ringsy, like the way it goes down. Because, you know, Captain Anarchy is going to be like super metal, right? So anyhow, as the kid's carving like the special S that like every junior high kid carves in a desk, he activates, like it's actually a symbol. It's a key that unlocks like this weird pagan power that's actually in the desk. And then it gives him the powers of Captain Anarchy. Okay. Right? You with me?
Yeah, so
he'll be like a Shazam type.
He was carving in, that's what's going to be imparted. So
he carves the S that acts as a key, and then the next thing he carves, like I guess like once you unlock the key, you're supposed to give your indicia, like whatever is going to be your shield, or like whatever is going to be your totem, or whatever it is. And it turns out that the next thing a kid naturally is going to carve into his desk is the Anarchy symbol, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, it has to happen. So then, you know, he could be like a Shazam type, right? Where, you know, he's like, he really is just like this zitty, like metalhead kid. And then, like, you know, he can become this like anti-hero. He could be like an anti-hero, or he could be a villain. You know, I think an anti-hero would be good because it would fit that age range, you know, where it's like a Ghost Rider type, you know, like a Johnny Blaze, that kind of figure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's my thought on it for a plot. Chris was saying, I like this backstory.
Yeah. If for those just joining in, that was something that I just kind of threw out as a far-fetched story. And like, oh, what if I do like a Captain Anarchy, and he just like goes on a tirade of this stuff, and Josh is like, why not do it? Like, now we're just kind of fleshing out the story. So like,
Yeah, so there's his backstory, right? And the fun
yeah,
part is, you know, it could kind of go anywhere. And maybe like
yeah,
he gets introduced as like a villain, but then you find it much like a Ghost Rider or a Johnny Blaze or like the Punisher, you know,
yeah,
where he could like start out as like what seems like a villain, and then you find out he's really just like this confused, like angry, like junior high kid, which is actually terrifying. Like, that would be a great villain. If I think about the guys I knew in junior high, and like something about that age range where there's like this just like mass appeal to like violence in like stories and stuff. Um yeah, that would be a terrifying super villain, you know?
yeah.
Like a really weird, like confused hormonal like junior high kid. Like, imagine yourself as a seventh grader, right?
Oh yeah.
But like with superpowers, with like godlike powers.
Oh my goodness.
That would be, I mean, the apocalypse would probably follow
That
very
would be.
quickly.
Which, now that you're talking about like the kid carving in the desk, I didn't carve into desk, but I would draw on desk, and I would be drawing like I remember once I was drawing I had just seen Hellraiser, so I was drawing like the wall with like the people's bodies and faces, kind of like so
I
kind of on the
understand that.
desk.
Yeah, like when I was in junior high, I used to read what's his name? Now I'm blanking out on his name. The Hellraiser guy. Like I used to read those
Um,
books.
Lovecraft. Not
No.
Lovecraft.
Oh my gosh. This is Clive Barker.
Clive Barker. I almost said Arno Stein. Like, no, that's
Yeah.
fine.
No, I was like really into Clive Barker at that time. And actually that's like the era, like when I was in junior high, that's when I read like Interview with a Vampire, and it was like all
Okay.
the darkness and stuff was really appealing at that age, you
Yeah.
know. There's a lot of fun going on in the chats. Chris said, "Oh man, junior high kids with actual power would be utter terror."
Yeah.
And he said, "I think that was the story of that horror superhero movie Brightburn." And then Chase very appropriately said, "Yeah, he'd kind of remind me of like Tetsuo, right? Because like that is the frightening thing about Tetsuo and Akira. It's like a kid with just like unbelievable power, but also like the rage of like a adolescent, you know?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Chase said Ed Piskor's Red Room is the Hellraiser of my generation, basically. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's funny because like I think I told Frank, I told you my Red Room story, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Because I was doing like a signing, and I just picked up a copy because I was like, huh, you know, because it was like there on the
Yeah.
shelf. And I had this reaction where I realized like I've reached an age that like I don't know if that appeals to, of like, ugh, you know.
Yeah.
But then I also had this like smile come across my like soul a little bit because I was like, yeah, it's good this is out there though for like junior high kids. You know, the kids that are like looking at it and it's for 18 or older and they're like, hey, and they bring it to the counter and the comic guy's just like, oh yeah, here. You're like, really? I can just buy this? I don't know. I think it's great because it's very like early EC horror. It's pretty hideous actually, but it's like hideous in a good way.
Okay.
It has no moral value whatsoever. Like early horror comics, you know.
Yeah.
That's the only value is it's just terribly violent and horrific. And again, I don't even know if I'd make that kind of stuff, but I can see the I don't know. I'm kind of glad it's out there. I don't know if that makes sense. Is that weird?
Yeah. I don't know. Like, was like goes back to what we were talking about, like banned books and like those. Like, let it exist. I mean, if it's not for you, then don't read it.
Yeah, and I kind of think like it's like there is a thing in art where it's like a safe way to explore really terrifying ideas, and I think for horror, um, I think it's important for like helping people face their fears a little bit
Yeah.
and be able to kind of simulate terror, but like in a safe way. I don't know. I feel like it's part of kind of I don't know. I don't know if I'm verbalizing it right. Maybe chat can help with that. I don't know. But I know it's weird, but I'm like glad it's out there, even though I wouldn't read it now, you know. But like if I were like in 8th grade, I'd be like buying every issue. Chris said, I mean, that's the whole genre. It's like a roller coaster, adrenaline without actual danger. Yeah, and it's like brutal. I mean, it's a brutal book. Like, you know, I can also see people like making an argument like that kind of thing shouldn't exist, but I would disagree with those people because I draw a really clear distinction between fiction and reality. You know.
Yeah.
It's like the people, you know, like people who kind of blame violence on video games or something. It's like, is it really the video game, or is it just that like the person was going to be violent and then, you know, the video game filled that hole? But like, if it weren't the video game, it'd be like a copy of Catcher in the Rye, you know?
Yeah. It'd be something.
Because there's like a long history with like the book Catcher in the Rye, where like even before I read it, I just thought it must be this like really violent book, you know? Because like the guy who shot John Lennon had it. The guy who shot Reagan had it. It's like all these guys had it. In fact, to the point where like there's been movies that have like riffed on it and been like maybe it was like a Manchurian Candidate kind of thing, right? Where like the book was like some kind of signifier that like unlocked the programmed killer or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But you would think it was like this really violent book, and it's like, no, it's just like a really not violent book at all. It's just that like people will find any reason, you know. I don't know. So I guess my point is like I tend to think like people will find a way to do horrific things. They don't need like a movie to make them do it, you know. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I get it. You know, if it's not one thing, it's gonna be the other.
Yeah, and I tend to take the idea that it's probably the person more than the thing they're consuming. You know. But that might also have something to do with the fact that I don't think we're made of like a lot of really good in our substance. You know, I think we all have very evil tendencies in ourselves, and so I think if we allow ourselves to like do evil, then most people would do evil. You know.
Yeah.
So that's a fun conversation. Okay, change the topic. Hey, he said, Chase said, well, if nobody makes a bold risk taking book, we'll never know. And that's what I love about Red Room. Ed Pisker was very gracious and encouraging when he visited my booth at the last Comic-Con. Well, dude, Ed Pisker is amazing. He's a really good cartoonist. Hip Hop Family Tree is amazing. Red Room is really well made. He, I think, was like mentored under Harvey Pekar, and was, I think, might have been the last artist on his roster. I'm trying to remember. But I know, I mean, he is, Ed Pisker is amazing. And I like that it's different. And the thing I like about it too is I know he is trying to make it an outlaw comic, you know, like his goal is to like really push buttons and really push the line with people. And I think even try to make people feel really uncomfortable, even people who like horror, you know? Yeah. But again, I could also see like maybe somebody picks it up and gets like a crazy idea, you know, but again, I kind of think maybe that person's just looking I don't know. That is a tough subject, you know. But yeah. What do you think? Do you think the art influences people to do bad things, or do you think it's people and they just kind of, I don't know, or it's just like a weird sick cycle?
Yeah, I think it's like really complicated because I don't think you're like, oh, like if I play this video game, it's going to corrupt me and corrupt my kids. But if I'm constantly playing video games where I'm chopping people's heads off, then there's gonna come a point where, hey, I'm gonna want to try this for real.
Possibly, yeah.
So
I mean, there is a little bit of that filling the tank.
And also, and like, if you're like, man, I feel really good when I do this. I wonder how it. But like, if it's that's all you're consuming, or even if it's like there's just something already in you and you're feeding it. So like, okay.
Yeah, I could kind of see
if
that.
If that's what you're feeding the most, then that's what's gonna come out.
I could see that. I mean, I do think there's some truth to like, and keep in mind, I'm not fully agreeing yet because
it's a tricky subject because my kids are just playing games all the time, and like, but I don't think they're gonna be like, they're gonna be serial killers. So.
Yeah, and it's like, but it's like I don't like. There's definitely ages for things. Like I don't let my kid watch a bunch of like horrifically violent stuff. But here's the thing, and I probably wouldn't even hand him something like Red Room, you know, at all. But if like he was in 8th grade and I found Red Room like hidden under a thing, I don't think I'd be like, oh my gosh, my kid's gonna be a serial killer. You know what I mean? I'd be like, oh, he's in 8th grade. Like, yeah, that makes sense. It's like ultra violent. Like kids are into that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I like this. Chase said, I read John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath when I was in elementary school. And to this day, I have an unhealthy obsession with downtrodden families and poverty-stricken characters in literature. I'm amazed you could get past the turtle crossing the road for an entire chapter. Still hate that chapter so much. I mean, it's a brilliant work and stuff, but like, really, you had to do a whole chapter of a turtle crossing a road? Frank, like Grapes of Wrath had like, there's like 5 pages that talk about an ant crawling on the toe of the turtle that is crossing the road in the desert. It's not a turtle, it's a tortoise. But it's just sorry, I'm still bitter about that. Like I'm bitter that I had to read that.
Yeah.
Chris said humans are way complex. Evil deeds are difficult to rationalize. So there's a search for simple reasons and scapegoats. Yeah, I think it's really complex. I think there's truth to what Frank was talking about, where especially if you're prone to something like it, I do think there is like a weird thing in some people that's not in everyone, that just gets unlocked by stuff like that. But I guess my point is, like, I think that key to unlock it is in like anything, because
Yeah.
I think with some mental illness and stuff, it's just like it's gonna get unlocked. Like they're gonna find a way. If it's not like a horror movie, then they'll be in their backyard and hear a dog telling them to do stuff,
Yeah.
And also the other thing that doesn't make me think it makes people like super violent or crazy is like most of the kindest people I know are like super hardcore horror movie buffs. And they're like the most passive, like sweet people on the planet, Whereas I know a lot of people who are like very conservative with what they'll watch. And I don't mean like politically, I mean, like just very conservative, like, with what they'll watch, and watch a lot of sports and are like some of the most violent people I've ever met. So it's like, it's hard to say, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's gonna come out somewhere.
Yeah.
If
so
it's not
yeah.
horror, it's like over enthusiastic about your sports team.
But I would say, like, I definitely think there is something to be said for like for instance, I really enjoy politics and debates, right? Like I enjoy listening to that. I enjoy I mean, I don't enjoy it. It's just fascinating to me. And it keeps my brain engaged. But I do have to disconnect from it sometimes, because it could be all encompassing and then kind of like make me into, like, not that it would make me terrible, but it's like, there is truth to like some of what you fill your tank with is gonna drive the ship a little bit, So yeah, I mean, I don't think, Frank, like from what you were expressing, it doesn't sound like we're very different on that, perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I lean more conservative and like in things like that. So like I remember what I put in.
Yeah.
But like I'm walking down the video store, like a store somewhere, and there's like a horror DVD. Like, oh no, kids, cover your eyes. Like,
yeah, and I mean, with my son, like I wouldn't let him near like a real horror movie, Like the other thing is he's just not at an age where he'd process that well,
Yeah.
But what's funny is he does have a higher tolerance than his cousin, who, like, if there's a monster in something, anything, gets like really scared.
Yeah.
Whereas Ben, like, he really likes werewolves and monsters and stuff, like, so for him it's like that's a lot of fun, so like he can watch some stuff, just not like, but it's all like for kids type stuff, that she can't watch because she just doesn't have the like, she's just not there, with it just scares
she's
her.
just a silly girl and she just doesn't understand.
Well, it's funny too, because she's like a total Tom girl, but it's just like but it's just funny that like it, I can imagine like different kids are gonna have different tolerances to different things. But yeah, I don't, like I said, I would be horrified if I found a copy of Red Room in my son's room at the age he's at right now. But like I said, if he was like in 8th grade or something and like had a copy of Red Room, I'd be like, yeah, that's good. But that might also just be that I remember what it's like to be that age, I don't know. Yeah. The other thing, there used to be a joke when I was in college amongst some people I knew. When I was a single guy, right?
Yeah.
And I hate to say this because it's not the best thing in the world, but it used to be pretty known amongst like single dudes that if you wanted to easily have your way with someone, you would meet somebody who was really conservative and repressed their whole life,
Okay. Yeah.
I hate to say that, but it's just like, as a parent, like, I don't know, like, I want my kids to be aware of the world. I obviously want to protect them and stuff like that, but I don't want to repress them to the point where they're just like, like, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like,
yeah,
because they're eventually gonna want to, like, well, what is it that you're keeping me from? They're gonna try it.
I think it's a healthy balance, right? Where it's like you want to protect your kids. At least I do. I want to protect my kid. I don't want him exposed to stuff. I don't want him making stupid decisions. Some stupid decisions that I might have made at a young age, I hope he'll make better ones. But at the same time, like, I need to give him enough freedom to where it's not like a dictatorial situation. Because, like, there's a reason that dictators have to have, like, really powerful armies, Because, like, what would happen, like, I don't know, like, if you took something like North Korea and they had a really weak military, like, internally, like, what do you think the people would do? I don't think a lot of the people would be like, yeah, we're going to keep this dictator in charge.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason, like, that style of leadership, like, requires, like, a really heavy hand and heavy rule because the people don't like it, they're pushed into it. They don't have well, I'm not saying all people, but I'm just saying, like, people don't tend to respond well to being pushed into something or repressed. And so, that for me is the hard balance of, like, parenting, at least something I think about, because it's like, I mean, especially with my kid right now, it's like it is hard to imagine, and a little heartbreaking to, like, think of, like, him losing some of his, like, childish fun and wonder, but that's gonna happen with life, and so I do try to, like, pre-think about it, like, how am I gonna handle that when that starts happening or when, like, he wants to, um, like, watch darker stuff or whatever. And I do know it's got to be a little more free than, like, a really repressed. I don't know. It's hard to. I guess that's why it's like I don't think there is, like, an easy answer with, like, how to navigate that.
Yeah.
To rule, like, to not rule, but to mentor and guide and lead in a responsible way where you're not strangling or, like, restraining too much of the person's freedom, It's hard to, yeah. But Frank, I think that also gives us a window into God.
Yeah.
Because I think it's mysterious, like, why humans have free will.
Yeah.
And like, one of the more salient questions I hear, people who don't believe what we believe, like, bring up is, like, the idea of, like, God willingly letting people commit evil, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of, like, I'm not saying I have a great answer. I'm just saying, like, feel like being a parent kind of gives you like a window into it, because it's like if you love, like if I love my wife, I'm not going to force her to love me back.
Yeah.
Because that's not love. That's like a whole different thing. That's kind of evil in its on its own. And same with your kids. Like if you love your kids, you're not going to like force them to never experience the world or be able to make a bad choice. Because that would be like being a dictator rather than a loving father, right? It's kind of weird. So, but to me, I think that, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but I'm like, I think that might give a window into like that quandary about God, you know? At least for me, you know?
Yeah, he gave us free will, so like, and he'll warn us, and he'll like, you know, we'll learn like, oh yeah, you're not supposed to do this, but ultimately it's up to us.
Yeah, and like, you know, which is confusing, I think, for a lot of people, right? Because they're like, why, you know? But I'm like, well, why do I want my son to be able to choose, and in being able to choose, have some freedom with it, which inherently like leaves him vulnerable to the possibility of choosing wrong, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird thing, but it's interesting to me that, you know, I feel like, I guess I'm just saying, like, I feel like parenting has given me a little window into that I don't know if I really saw as much before having a kid, you know?
Yeah.
Like, did it work that way for you too, where it kind of opened up a little bit, like where you're like, oh, I can kind of understand like why like there's so many analogies to like God as the father, you know?
Yeah, there's I forget where it is exactly, but there's a verse that says, you love your kid, and even bad like people who are fathers, they want the best for their kids. So your kid asks for something, you're gonna give him a scorpion. Like no, you're gonna give him what he asked for. So like even you who are wicked uh, and understand that there's good and there's bad with your kids and what they want or what they ask for. One thing about me, the God, the Father, like I know what's best for you. Uh, and so, and I might be mixing two verses, but like, you're gonna be chastised because I love you.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's like it is your freedom, your will, and like there's gonna be a point where even God's like, do your thing, and I'm not gonna interfere. So you do your thing, and but eventually you're gonna come back, or you're gonna realize like, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, it's mysterious, but it's like and like it's weird because even while saying this, like I can see it from the perspective that I used to see it in, like as an atheist, and I even explained this to Adam too, because Adam was like wanting to kind of debate theology a little bit, which I actually would be down to do. So like if Adam wanted to get into it, but I have a feeling I'd probably lose that debate, and I don't mean that in a negative way, and I don't mean that to say that what we believe is totally irrational. It's just that I have to kind of believe that what we believe is totally irrational, because I believe it. So like there's also like a verse in the Bible that says the wisdom of God is foolishness to man.
Yeah.
And without the Holy Spirit, I really do think what I believe can kind of sound absurd on its face.
Yeah.
Although I also believe that people think it's true. Like regardless, like I think there's something about this strange story about Christ that I think touches truth with people. And so but like for me, like the yeah, I mean, that really core question of like, why would a loving God create people that he knew would like rebel against them and give them an option? Like, and I've heard the analogy where they're like, would you put your kid in a room with like a knife, like, and be like, don't touch that knife, like,
Yeah.
and there is something that seems kind of malicious about that, I think, from the outside, like without the Holy Spirit and an understanding. But I'm just saying, like, and I'm not saying I have a perfect answer to it, but I do think being a parent gives me a window into it, because I wouldn't want my kid to just love me because I'm his dad.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I do, but I'd feel bad if I like found out that he was just forced to love me, or that he's like an automaton that can't not love me. Like,
Yeah.
it means a lot more to me that like, hopefully our relationship will be meaningful enough to where when he's grown and wise, he'll be like, yeah, I love my dad, like, and I'll have done a good job to kind of earn that.
Yeah.
And I think that, I know it's weird, but it's like, I think with God, like, you like kind of like not God, like, if God is good and everything, then like inherently, like if you are taking away that, it just necessitates evil to have something polar opposite of that. Like, to have something that's absent from God, just by necessity would have to be evil. But to be able to have free will, you'd have to be able to choose God or not God, right?
Yeah.
And so it sort of creates evil. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like evil by necessity for love, which is really insane. And I haven't really wrapped my head around it fully, but like, to me, that's really fascinating. And I only start getting a slight chip at that idea, that conundrum, like, because of being a parent, which is weird.
Yeah.
And I think we're kind of in similar boats there.
Oh,
Chris
yeah.
was saying, "Oh, that forbidden fruit," and then he said, "I love the question of free will and predestination." And he said, "I think many comparisons work for parenthood in the Christian God view, though a challenge for a human to imagine being a parent to 8 billion kids, all with free will and sometimes killing each other." Yeah, I mean, there's the problem of pain. There's the problem of predestination. These are all like like the weird thing is, whatever you believe, there's difficulty and things, like, I don't think anyone knows like 100%,
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, there's also just like the horror of like, what if it's all pointless and we just create our own meaning? That to me is pretty horrifying, because that means like all of this suffering is pointless. And that sucks. So it's kind of weird, because I can see where it would be horrifying to think like all of this suffering was somehow the responsibility of a god, and I can see that viewpoint. But I also find it really terrifying to think that it just is. And I used to believe that, but it's like I never found that comforting. Like, I had a line for it too, where I'd just be like, well, I mean, we've all not existed, so what's so scary about not existing? You know what I mean? Like, and I understand that still, like, theoretically, but it doesn't mean that I'm comfortable with that, or comfortable with like evil just kind of getting away with it. Like,
Yeah.
like, I really don't like the idea of somebody just comfortably, causing World War II or something, and then being able to just like bow out, and like, just now he's at this like peaceful existence. Like, that seems horrifyingly wrong, So it's like, I guess my point is, there's just things people are going to be uncomfortable with, like, I think, regardless of what you believe. But like, for me, I'm just openly admitting, like, one, that I don't even understand, and probably is like a weakness, like because Frank, like when you like, I'm sure you learn like evangelical stuff and like ways to evangelize, and like that's definitely like one of the harder ones is like the problem of pain or suffering. Like that's a tough one, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Chris was saying contemplating the indifference of the cosmos can be horrifying. It's a whole genre. Yeah, for sure. So it's like I don't know, but I do think for me as like somebody who believes, I find a profound enriching of what I see as my relationship with God. As I see my son grow and I experience being a father.
Yeah.
It just unlocks some things that are really interesting. Yeah. Dude, I finished this panel. I'm getting crazy into like deep theology. And it would have been fun to have this conversation with Adam too, because I think I like people who think about things, you know, and I like that about Adam too. I like that he's thinking about things. I don't know. I think that's fun.
I was seeing if he was on. I guess not. He might be getting some sleep.
Yeah, which is pretty good.
Yeah, it is an interesting subject, and I've been listening to like, and there'll be times where like I want my kids to like, why don't you get this? Like, why don't you learn this, or why don't you like behave and like.
And they have to kind of stumble through it, you know.
Yeah, it's like they need to like go through it, and really all I have to do is encourage them, show compassion, and correct them when they need it. And then that's God like telling us like, no, don't go over there. Well, why? Like I want to go over there. Like fine, go over there and see what happens. Sometimes these guys will just let us.
Yeah, and I just think of like the heartbreak of like imagine like being a parent who did like everything right, and then your kid just decides to like go and murder someone.
Yeah.
Like, which is like I think every parent's like complete horror story in their head. Like the idea that like you could do everything right and your kid could just make a really bad choice, like all of their own volition. And that's the risk. I'm not saying we're all going to have like murderer children. Let's, you know, I do think if you do the right thing as a parent, you can kind of hopefully guide your kid on the right path. But that's the scary thing about free will and this whole relationship you choose to have with like a family. Like when you start a family, there's always that terrifying prospect that like you can't have an automaton and have love.
Yeah.
But if you don't have an automaton, they can have a certain level of autonomy to make like the worst decision possible. Mm-hmm. And you kind of have to allow it. It's a weird thing, but it's like that's part of the gamble. Or you become an authoritarian, and then eventually, like whenever given freedom, the people under you will rebel. You know, it's weird. Oh, I love this. Chris said in Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan has a profound experience contemplating the incredibly small chance of humans evolving as a species in two individuals after millions of generations falling in love one day. Dude, Dr. Manhattan, excellent. And I personally was really happy they kept that part in the movie, because I was a little surprised that they were able to get away with that. All right, we got to wrap. We got profound and deep toward the end.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about MC Hammer a little earlier.
Yeah.
Frank's
go back
revealed.
And check that out.
Yeah, Frank's revealed some deep cuts. Frank, I want to see your playlist at some point. I don't know.
It's
I
just
found it
random.
charming. I found it charming that you're listening to MC Hammer. I think that's awesome. Because I could rock some.
I gotta add that new song now, or that old song from the Addams
get that
Family.
Addams Family soundtrack on there.
On.
Chase said 10,000 years can give you such a creak in the neck, Dr. Manhattan. All right, guys. Well, enjoy your existential dread.
Good night, folks.
Or your thoughts of the problem of pain if you're in Frank and I's camp, which is a haunting and disturbing one that I've never heard a theologian like pin 100%, because it's weird. Have a good night and enjoy the mysteries of the cosmos and the universe. And oh yeah, I forgot. Chase did one of the deepest cuts and funniest jokes I've ever heard, which was crass at Claire's. I still think a crass logo on like a sparkly pink shirt at like a Claire's store in a mall is a very funny idea. And not too far off. I've seen it happen with other. I mean, I think that's happened with the Ramones. So I don't know. Who knows? All right. Frank, where can everybody find your stuff and check out your interview with Jim Lujan too?
Well, you can go to the Traco Creative Cast. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. We are close to 100 subscribers. And you can check out our latest interview with Jim Lujan, where we discuss some things about animation and just random fun things. And there is a special guest that dropped in for a little bit, so you're going to want to go check that out.
And, I really want to know who the special guest is.
Yeah.
But I don't want you to reveal it because I want everybody to have to go check it out. So for the mystery's sake, that's awesome.
Yeah, and go to Salazar Art Nation, and you can subscribe to me, watch my stuff there, and you go any of the links there. You'll find links to my stuff, to my Etsy store where you get some mini comics, or Instagram. You can see me update and post art. And that is a sticker of Corey Curry in the mech suit that I made. And I sent it to all my friends, my Artcaster friends. And there's going to be a mini comic that I am actually working on now. I was working on page 2, working on a panel that shows how Corey got into that suit. So that's something to look out for. Subscribe to Anna Rob also.
I love it. All right. Oh my gosh, there's so much cool stuff in the chats, and I actually want to. Okay, so next time we should talk like meaning and stuff, because I feel like sometimes I'll delve away from that because I don't want to like bore people with like what I believe. But I also feel like it dips into some really fun. Oh, Corey just popped on. What are you doing?
Yeah,
Corey?
you see.
He's like, I'm a sticker. But I do feel like those are really fun, kind of deep conversations that can be really interesting. So maybe we'll get into that because it'll be fun on a future one. Maybe we'll try to have Adam on too. And maybe there's a way to do it where we won't be like debating, but we'll be discussing, because I think that's a lot more productive and fun.
I think the way it was done last time when Gary Hodges was on, he was able to kind of mediate.
Mm-hmm.
I think having like 4 people, so that way someone can keep some other ones in check. Like, okay, let's think.
Yeah. But I like the idea of just kind of having just a talk, like rather than a debate. So I think I have a feeling Adam might actually be down for that, because I'm actually kind of curious about his stuff too. But it's a fun kind of mysterious thing to talk about, and it's fun.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll delve into that hot button stuff. All right. Well, if you guys are into deep stuff, questions of existence, then you would really like my comics because they deal with deep questions of existence. And both of them, like, they have different conclusions. It's crazy regarding deep questions of existence. So Jacob's Apartment is about this guy struggling to find meaning and purpose and losing his faith. So that's coming out in May, and it's a good book. Full color, 136 pages. 2 stories.
Available
Is about
now.
somebody struggling with questions of existence and finding faith. So interesting, crazy, deep books. Pick them up. All right. And Frank, I've kept you on here for way too long, so we'll call it. All right, guys. Actually, I'm to be clear, I'm the one bowing out here because I literally will be dead tomorrow if I don't get some rest. Thank you to everybody in the chats who came and hung out. Chris said I would listen, and I know Chris would because Chris and I used to have. I mean, for as long as I've known Chris, we love talking about like weird existential questions for like, gosh, the decade we've been friends or whatever. So no doubt. And I have no doubt Corey would probably be down. I have a feeling people are down, interested in that kind of stuff. All right. Have a good night, guys. Thanks. Chase, I'm going to check out your stuff on Instagram. I owe you that. And I have a feeling I'll check it out and be like, I've seen this. But it's good to familiarize myself again. And I'm excited. I hope you made progress on your book. And I don't know why these extras always take forever. It just feels awkward being like, bye. Because you guys have spent time with me and hung out with me. So, all right. But we will call it. So have a good night. Rest well, everyone. Get your comics done. And Frank, I feel like there's like a thing you always say about comics that you should close this out with.
Make comics, not excuses.
Boom. That's right.